This
Evening.
conference will now be recorded.
Good evening. I want to say thank you for coming to our Monday the 1st. That's kind of odd. But Monday the 1st meeting in the town of Ocean Ridge. Kelly, would you take the roll, please?
Commissioner Cassidy,
Here.
Vice Mayor Cos,
Here.
and Mayor Pugh.
Here. Okay, can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Before we begin, I'd like to just take a moment of silence for Vice Mayor Cos's brother who passed away recently. Sorry about that, Steve.
Yeah. I want to thank everyone in town that sent cards and came to our house. It's a tough time, but there is a life-saving tale in this that applies to everyone here in South Florida. My brother died from metastatic melanoma that his dermatologist refused to acknowledge for a full year. My brother kept on going back to the doctor and he said, no, it wasn't. By the time they biopsied him, it was too late. So take control of your own health care. And he's in Massachusetts, which has pretty damn good doctors. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Steve. All right, any additions, deletions, or modifications and approval of the agenda?
I don't have anything.
Anybody?
Nope.
All right. Okay, presentations and proclamations. All right, so, what's that?
We need to approve the agenda first.
Sorry.
You need,
Oh, yeah, the presentation. Well, we're gonna move that to number 1 then?
no, you need to approve the agenda.
Oh, yeah, anybody make a motion?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Like sign. All right, now on the presentations and proclamations. All right, the proclamation for Municipal Clerks Week is April 30th through May 6th, 2023. I'd also like to add to that I'd like to extend appreciation to our municipal clerk, Kelly Avery, and Deputy Town Clerk, Katina Pinder, and to all municipal clerks for their vital services they perform and their exemplary dedication to the communities they represent. And we couldn't get along without our town clerk, that's for sure. Thank you. All right, our next proclamation is for National Police Week, which is May 15th through the 21st, 2023. And it's also the National Peace Officers Memorial Day, May 15th, 2023. And I'd like to add to that we honor those of law enforcement officers who, through their courageous deeds, have made the ultimate sacrifice in service to their community or have become disabled in the performance of duty. And let us recognize and pay respect to the survivors of our fallen heroes. Thank you so much for your service. Thank you for everybody that works here and watches out for our residents. Thank you. All right, now moving on to the employee recognition. I'm going to turn that over to you, Lynn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you're aware, the Employee Recognition Committee normally meets each quarter and having accepted nominations to recognize an individual employee for their contributions to the town over the past months, both internally and externally. From the beginning of the calendar year until just recently, the town hall has dealt with being short-staffed as we worked through the process of filling vacancies in the building clerk and the deputy clerk's positions. We've been very fortunate to have several staff members that stepped up to take on responsibilities that were outside their job roles, required that they learn new skills, and were willing to work additional hours beyond their regular schedules. Though it is unusual to recognize more than one employee before the end of the year, it is, in this instance, in discussions with the recognition committee, we believe that it is important to recognize all the employees that contribute to the successful ability of the town to maintain daily operations and service to our residents and customers. The employees that we are recognizing, and although only one was able to make it here this evening due to other commitments, are Susan Ammons Tate, Billy Armstrong, Kelly Avery, Robert Blanchard, Jean Hallahan, and Maria Savino.
Thank you. And please thank him for us. All right, now we'll look forward to the
And-
present.
Mr. Mayor, I believe the police chief has someone he wants to recognize from the police department.
Okay.
Yes, Mike Ferguson's in the back of the audience there. Just recently, Mike Ferguson, along with FTO, the new officer he was training, Officer Archer, conducted a traffic stop just for an expired registration. They conducted the traffic stop and interacted with the sole driver, and they immediately detected a strong odor of marijuana. They asked if he possessed a medical marijuana card. He did not. Subsequent search of the vehicle yielded the following contraband: 184 grams of marijuana, 84 grams of psychedelic mushrooms, 50 LSD stamps, 45 LSD tabs. They also discovered scales, baggies, and rolling papers. Officer Parkinson and Archer charged the driver with felony possession of marijuana over 20 grams with intent to sell, felony possession of hallucinogenic mushrooms with intent to sell, felony possession of LSD with intent to sell, possession of drug paraphernalia. Officer Parkinson and Archer, who's not here tonight, you're both to be commended for your diligent and proactive policing, which resulted in a large quantity of dangerous drugs taken off the streets. Good job, and keep up the good work.
I didn't know that was English person.
All right, now, Neil, you want to do your presentation? We have a presentation from Septic to Sewer and Florida Government Utility Authority by our own resident Neil Hennigan and Steve Springs.
Good evening, commissioners, Mayor Pugh, and residents. It's been a long time to get to this point. Finally, give you an update post-COVID as to what's been going on with septic to sewer project. To outline what I'm going to talk about, I'd like to just provide a small background, tell you what's been working, tell you what didn't work, tell you an opportunity that we have, and a gentleman that's here tonight to explain that to us, and to get into just a brief discussion of items that initially were given to us as direction as to why we were going to have a septic to sewer committee, and that's to find a roadmap, to look at the idea of the scope, to look at some costing, and to make recommendations. So that's what I would like to do tonight. So I'd like to start out with the first page, which is the background. Put that one up. So we got into septic to sewer as a topic, if people can remember this far back, as it's 4.5 years since this started, and Mr. Kern, I think, is the expert in this area, and that was that Boynton Beach approached the Ocean Ridge Town Commission with a proposal to solve our failing water treatment facilities at 5 Ocean Ridge multifamily complexes south of Woolbright Road. The door was open. Additionally, this led to an interlocal workshop, okay, between the town commission and Boynton Beach. Boynton opened the discussion starting with, I think it was I'm trying to think of what the correct word is. They started talking about potable water. They didn't start talking about sewer. And the discussion centered on being benevolent to us and giving us city water rates for Ocean Ridge customers, but there was an exchange needed. The transfer of ownership of the water infrastructure of Ocean Ridge to Boynton Beach. The discussion later expanded to include sewer wastewater service to the entire town, not just the multifamily complexes. And Boynton Beach said they had a preliminary plan that they would like to present to us. So looking back, I think if I remember correctly, Mayor Cos said we ought to have a committee, and we ought to have a workshop again with Boynton once this committee was formed. Each commissioner, I believe at the time, got to appoint one member to this new commission, and we had our first meeting in July of 2019. Boynton Beach came over and presented us with a wastewater proposal, and we were off and running. We got together after our initial meeting of appointing who was going to be the chair, vice chair, et cetera, and started to get together our ideas and build our direction of where we were going to go through a statement of purpose. That process went on very well for a year. We did extensive assessment, we did infrastructure analysis, we did looked at best practices from other towns and communities, and quite a lot of work, which I think will be very beneficial if this stuff is moved on to a formal engineering assessment. We did that up through June of 2020, and when we had our last meeting, we recommended going to use vacuum technology, and we said the next thing that we were going to, two things we were going to work on, the major one being a roadmap. And then COVID hit. So we had all this data from Lisa Trepetti's staff engineering. We had extensive chemical and package plant stuff from Mr. Kern. We had some financial stuff from Art Zev, and what were we going to do with it? So I was in the position I couldn't have a public meeting. We could not meet again as a committee. So I began independently to work on a roadmap, which I did for about a 6-month period. And then I started interacting with a total of 4 commissioners and town manager Stevens. This project was never shared with the committee or the public due to COVID restrictions on public meetings. So from this point on, I'm speaking as basically a independent project leader. I can't speak for the committee because the committee didn't share it. So 2021, the entire year disappeared. So there was no progress. In 2022, looked like we were going to get together again. But something happened, something got in the way, and that was the water pipes. The controversy in the town as to what to do with the pipes and what to do with the water contract with Boynton, I was told by Tracy Stevens to keep my nose out of it for a while. So, and that was shared by a couple of the commissioners. So basically I started just treading water. So I was frustrated and could not see where we were going, and lo and behold, the election was coming up. And once again, people did not want to get out front during an election. Let's just make it simple. So again, little was done. The environment has changed for the entire project. So now I'm going to talk about things that didn't work well. Never mind the calendar and COVID. The committee format is no longer effective for moving septic to sewer forward. The Sunshine Law suffocates the investigative and creative process. We have an inability to share, to evaluate, to judge, and to critique each other and what we're advocating in a timely, collaborative manner. Potable water and septic to sewer are interrelated. Lack of action and resolution of water infrastructure ownership negatively affects the discussion and interaction concerning septic to sewer that would be necessary to achieve any interlocal agreements. Okay. We also spent, I think, an inordinate amount of time and energy chasing elusive grants. Okay. We are not an impoverished community. Our drinking water is not contaminated. Instead, we must compete by demonstrating commitment and progress. For us, grants will be earned, not given. A lack of synergy. Management and staff turnover in both Ocean Ridge and Boynton Beach has led to our inability to reach out, to coordinate with, or to leverage the progress made by our neighbors in Gulfstream, Hypoluxo, and Mid-Alabama. During all this time, dramatic Boynton Beach development is on the horizon. It will constrain sewer capacity, and Ocean Ridge wastewater access to the South Central wastewater treatment facility is definitely going to be impacted. So the proposal from Boynton, where they wanted all of our sewage, wanted as fast as they can get it, they may not want it anymore now, but we can't even ask the question because we don't have a relationship. 2022 did, though, end on a positive note, because other communities are now dealing with the same thing we are, and a bunch of them are smaller communities. So fortunately, the League of Cities put together a septic to sewer seminar in December of last year. Okay, it was online. One of the leaders of that seminar was Steve Spratt from the FGUA. I took part in that seminar and made some great connections from that seminar with some towns that were dealing with the same issues as we were. And I collaborated with them. And if you go to the next page, between talking to those other town managers and that seminar, this is best practices, please. It would be page 4. Flip it over or whatever. Okay, there we go. So the best practices, I'll just read them off. I'm sure many of them will be common sense and other ones are very pertinent to Ocean Ridge. Know what you don't know. Surround yourself with professionals. Designate a point person, a leader, and hold them accountable. At every opportunity, communicate and educate. And that's a process I think our committee was doing a hell of a job with. And I think some of the turnouts that we got early on were exceptional. Hold a community referendum to ensure support. Never lowball your estimates, overscope and over deliver. And this clearly is the guidance for going out and getting grants. Make your connection to the sewer mandatory. Don't vacillate. If you're going to go into it, and make sure that you're going to have participation. For engineering, this was kind of eye-opening to me. I always thought we had a great relationship with Lisa Trefetti. I liked working with her, but the advice was to go outside, to network with those engineering companies that do this business all the time, that are used to working with FGUA, they're used to working with DEP, and we would be better off not having to reinvent the wheel. Use experts in this field of public sewer. And this is a company we've already engaged, and I know FGUA also uses them, and that's Raftellus for the allocation of equitable cost metrics. That's an area that we were eventually going to discuss at septic to sewer if we met again. And I think that's going to be one of the biggest hurdles for this town, is dealing with that issue. Interlocal agreements are the key to success. I strongly advocate that we reestablish a working relationship with Boynton Utilities and Boynton Beach. And the last advice was don't go it alone. Recognize that small municipalities need a partner, and one of the partners that is available to us that we did not know about at the beginning is a special government unit called the Florida Government Utility Authority, and Mr. Spratt will speak to that after this. Could you go to the overview? So I would like to speak to a couple of specific things about the FGUA that are not general. I believe he's going to talk about or take questions, and he's going to address projects they've worked on and some other things. I wanted to address things that are specific to our needs. And The first one is the FGUA is a special purpose government. They are just like us. They have all the same authority as a municipality, except they can't tax. Is that correct? Yes. Can't do ad valorem. Okay. They acquire, they own, they approve, and they operate water and wastewater utilities. Local government forms a partnership with them through an interlocal agreement. They're granted by Florida with the authority to set rates, charges, assessments, and issue debt. They enjoy the same benefit of low-cost public financing that cities and counties enjoy, including eligibility for state and federal grants. If you parse these first four things, these are all topics that we've had difficulty dealing with, how we as a small town we're going to do some of these things. They are able to do all of them and have experience doing all of them. The FGUA can provide a vital transitional step for local governments to acquire, interconnect, or consolidate their local utilities. The opportunity for Ocean Ridge to merge potable water and sewer into a combined utility. And water would actually be available now, because one of the things that FGUA can do is transfer what you have to them. So it gives us the opportunity to keep our pipes, to bring the utility billing and structure from Boynton. And that gets us started in this business, and then we can add sewer on top of it. Provides Ocean Ridge with a resolution of the potable water infrastructure. I did that in different words. Okay, each member government is also granted the right to acquire the utility system in their jurisdiction from the FGUA for only the amount of the outstanding debt. So at some point, if we're mature, we don't want to deal with FGUA anymore, we can bring it back. So I think that's an outstanding opportunity that we need to become more educated on and to consider. Let me now talk about a couple of things that the commission asked for: to scope the project, to cost the project, and to develop a roadmap. I don't think this meeting's long enough to, could you put the roadmap up, please? I don't think this meeting is long enough or whatever and I think you need more time to digest what I'm trying to present here. That the roadmap is a time task relationship. It's not an actual critical path construction project timeline. Okay, it's there to make you think of what the pieces of the puzzle are, how they might go together, and to give you some sense of timing. In other words, it's a conceptualization for gaining perspective. So I would just like to leave it that, and this includes people in the audience, in the community, get a copy of this, or at least the commissioners have a copy. I'm open to individually discuss this at any time. And I think that would be a better way of doing it than trying to, I could come back to another meeting or whatever, however you'd like to approach it. But I think it's too big a topic for tonight. But there is a roadmap. The other item is some costing. This I think we can talk to a little bit more. So this is a cost comparison, and it's like anything you do with a project, it's an initial estimate. This isn't hard data. This is relative to the input from the roadmap. So it's based on that scope of work, and then using the engineering studies that Gulfstream paid $50,000 or more for, and using the study that Manalapan did, I went in and I scaled it for Ocean Ridge. I ratioed some things. I benchmarked with those engineering studies and the proposal that Boynton had given us in 2018. And I gave you the best estimate and a comparison. So at least we have a starting point. I think I can support what I did. I'm couldn't say it's gonna be the final number, but it's not out of left field by any sense. So if you look at that, for Ocean Ridge, we're probably talking about a third, as of 2023. The numbers, I will caution you, the numbers on here are 2020 constant dollars. But I did go through the inflation thing. I added 17.5% to inflation since 2020, since when I did it, to give you 2023 numbers. Manalapan's numbers are 2022, Gulfstream's is 2020, and Boynton's numbers are 2018. So we have a system cap cost estimated of about $30 million, which works out, if you take our 1,450 parcels, approximately $20,000 per parcel. And then we get into how do we connect, how do we decommission septic, what system do we pick? Excuse me, I did put low pressure on there. We did vote to do vacuum. I think I can justify vacuum in many ways, and I will show you in a second why. But a decommissioning charge of about $5,000 per single family house. That will vary because obviously we all know that we're not equal neighbors. Some properties are big, some are on a corner, some have septic in the rear. Isn't that correct?
That's right.
Yeah.
I still have it.
Yeah, I was thinking of you when I looked at that. And so we're probably talking $35 million as a nut to start out. Quite a bit different from what Boynton proposed a long time ago. They were only talking about 20.4 million, but for some reason they didn't have even the correct number of parcels in our town, right? So got to take that one with a grain of salt. And the way it's highlighted, we are recommending vacuum, and Manalapan has chosen low pressure, Gulfstream's chosen low pressure, and Boynton recommended vacuum for us. The issue with the difference, just make it simple, between a vacuum system and a low pressure system. For the system itself, the digging of the roads is the same, which we're only talking about a 3-foot pipe, a 3-foot down pipe. We're not talking about 18 feet like gravity. They're both about the same size. For the vacuum pumping station, we're probably talking a third more, maybe up to 50% more, and a little bit bigger footprint than a low pressure system. But then out in the community, we would not have as many lift stations and need locations for those. So that's probably almost a wash, maybe still a little bit to the advantage of low pressure. But the big difference is vacuum is a system where you share a vacuum pit between, or you can share it between multiple houses. So on your property, all you have to do is provide a pipe from your building to that vacuum pit. Doesn't require a separate tank, doesn't require any use of the septic tank. And if abutting properties, two can share. If you can get under the street to get into that vacuum pit, if the houses are relatively small, you may get 3 or 4 houses on one vacuum pit. Okay, that vacuum pit current charge, $6,000 a unit. Okay, if we go to low pressure, and then that's a system cost. The vacuum stations are all part of the system, not the homeowner. Okay, and I went to the village of Palm Springs, and they have a no-fault system. They don't even, you don't get put in timeout for putting your cell phone or your baby's diaper or a suitcase into your septic pipe until you've created enough havoc that then they feel they have to tell you something. But normally it's just no harm, no foul. We fix it. Okay. I advocate for that. I think it makes, it strengthens the idea that we can share these vacuum pits. When you get to the multifamily, you just pick how many vacuum pits need to be bridged together to handle what comes out of the macerator pump and low pressure system that the package plants already have. So that part is very simple. The big change with low pressure comes on the individual homeowner, and this is where Manalapan's having a problem. When they got estimates a couple of years ago, macerator was costing $4,000 to $5,000. Now they're getting $9,000 bids for. And every home would have to have one. Every home would have to service it, maintain it, and supply electricity to it. So the connection charges are higher, the decommissioning charges are higher. And Gulfstream has chosen to do low pressure because they already have pre-existing system in part of their town, and they're just going to mirror what they've done before, rather than go back and say, vacuum would be better. They're just gonna level the playing field and continue doing what they did. Manalapan, on the other hand, this part I don't understand. They are going to low pressure because the town manager seems to be inordinately afraid of the maintenance costs of vacuum. And a lot of that is old history. In the past, if your street had a vacuum problem, it was difficult to find whose pit wasn't working. But now with wireless technology, you can have communication with every pit, you can have communication with every pipe for its pressure and its operating status. So I think that's a red herring. If you look at the maintenance costs, these are by year. These would be, the portion that's here is only to the town. And obviously, if you have the macerator with low pressure, you're going to have, it's going to be like a hoot system. You're going to have a maintenance agreement and all that sort of stuff to make sure it continues to operate. So that's going to be a cost to you. So that's the cost structure. So any questions? I know
Not yet.
that's a
There's
data
a ton,
dump.
there's a ton of questions,
Right.
but.
It's a data dump.
But I think we'll get it's detail that, isn't gonna move this meeting forward. What are you exactly here for?
Okay. So I just wanted to get any questions on that. All right, so now I'm gonna get to the recommendations. Is that okay?
That's perfect.
All right,
Thank you, Neil.
thank you. All right, so, there's the chart, and I just want to caveat. So the recommendation from me as an individual, I'm not giving, at this point, I'm not a thumbs up or thumbs down. Okay, I can't speak for any of the other members. What I'm taking your question to be for recommendation is, you are the deciding body. If you decide to proceed, what I think are steps that will facilitate that being a successful move forward. Okay, so I think we need, obviously, the support and consent of the Ocean Ridge Town Commission. I think we need to outline our funding pathway more than just our penny infrastructure tax. That's enough money to get us an engineering study only a tenth of it to do an engineering study. And it's a down payment on starting to move forward. So completing the engineering assessment, which would be necessary to get FGUA on board and to start going into the figuring out how to finance everything. Community support voiced through a referendum. I'm a strong advocate of that. And that's, every community told me the same thing. Then where the people stand. And if you can convince them once and let them have that voice, then it's hard for them to not have your back moving forward, because there are going to be ups and downs in this process. We need to choose an interlocal partner with a shared mission. I think we have to go back and see if Boynton is that partner, or the partner that I brought here today to talk to you. And I think we need a designated project management leadership team. So that's my recommendations going forward. And other than looking at the financial issue, the demographics of the town in terms of income and property values, I don't know what the committee would do more to help you. So,
Well, thank you for that presentation, Neil.
Yeah.
It was a lot of work. Really appreciate it. I guess we'll hear from the FGUA fellow.
yes,
And then from there, we can decide on how we want to move forward, or maybe move this to the next step, which would be the support and consent of the commission. Maybe at a future meeting, we have other commissioners up here.
okay. Thank you for
Thank
that
you.
responsibility.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the commission. I'm Steve Spratt, I'm Assistant Manager for the Florida Government Utility Authority. And I'm going to zip through material very quickly because I know you have a full house and much business to do. But I've been asked to just come and describe what the FGUA does, how it works, and how it may help in this infrastructure project. And I'm just going to pick two examples of where we're doing this elsewhere in the state, which led to the Florida City County Managers Association webinar that FDEP and two of our partners governments, the city of Crystal River and Nassau County, joined us on. So it was DEP staff that provide the funding, the process applications, myself and the city and county. So go ahead and jump into the first slide. We'll basically answer what is the FGUA. Well, first of all, I'm not here selling anything, right? Because we are a government. We're not quasi-government. I don't have an engineering firm. I don't have an operations firm. I don't construct these things myself. We are a special purpose unit of government that was authorized by state law. It's kind of like an airport authority or an expressway authority, right? It's a government entity, but it's just got a single purpose, unlike you or a county, which has multi-purpose functions. So all it takes really is more than two entities, government entities, to come together and agree that we want to work on water, wastewater improvements, et cetera. So we currently have 7 member governments that are on that board that have come together for solving utility problems, right? And anybody who joins with the FGUA has a right to sit on the board. So it's governed by a local government appointed board. They're non-elected by prescription because they're appointed by their elected bodies. Could be a county manager, or assistant county manager, county engineer, utilities director, someone that can represent their interests on this governmental authority. Not all of the governments we work in are part of that board, otherwise we get very unwieldy. I'll describe that in a second. We reach out to 14 counties with over 130,000 customer connections, got about $102 million annual operating budget and a $237 million capital improvement program. So here's the footprint real quick. This is where we are. There's 84 utility systems that have all sort of one way or another become part of the FGUA in 14 counties. Those are the listing of the systems that we currently operate. I highlight particularly the MacDill Air Force Base. The federal government sold the FGUA, the water and wastewater utilities at that very important base, home of Central Command, Special Operations Command, because they liked the governmental nature of it, yet we are private sector contractors running it. So it gives them the optimum flexibility. Also of interest is the city of Dunellen. It was a city government that was sort of strapped with an over demand system, regulatory compliance problems, just reached the conclusion that we're not good at this and we need to get rid of it and focus on police and fire and public works. So they sold their utility to the FGUA. It's in Marion County. And we've just made dramatic improvements because it's sitting in a spring shed area. And then finally, the Flagler County utility system. So we're not just buying private utilities, we're partnering with local government, right? And that webinar had a representative from the city of Crystal River, the city manager, and the county manager of Nassau, which will tell you the collaboration approach that Neil mentioned, right? We don't go where we're not wanted. We're usually invited there to help, and we're there just to help them solve utility problems. So far, so good. We are currently negotiating to purchase the Amelia Island utility on Nassau. So that's how we work and where we are. Next. So the powers, as Neil mentioned, acquire, construct, operate, manage, improve public facilities. In our case, it's water and sewer. Provide mandatory connections, levy rates, fees, and charges, just like any other you are empowered to do. We can't impose ad valorem taxes. We can't acquire land and rights for interest to improve the utility. We can, of course, apply for, receive, and accept state and federal money, issue bonds. We have A-grade credit ratings in the bond market to go out and borrow money if we have to, impose, collect, and enforce special assessments. Okay, so the only requirements to form and modify a GUA, as I mentioned before, 2 or more government entities come together and say, we'd like to try to work on making improvements, buying stuff, fixing it. They sign an interlocal agreement and they all consent, and then they appoint a board member. So that's kind of how we've come to where we are. Now, the reason why the FDP essentially has used our name and recommended us is because we've had to bring collaboration together. Sewer services in particular extremely expensive, a lot more expensive than water services. And they're finding themselves strapped with how do we put the money out there in the best possible way, cost-effective way. Collaboration is the key. So as Neil mentioned, we do get together with interlocal agreements with other governments that have capacity to share it. That's cheaper than building their own stuff. For example, in Fort Myers, we picked up a community to serve in the Island Estates community, sent all that waste flow so they didn't have to rebuild a plant. And we take the flow to our plant, we have a reclamation facility, and then we turn around and treat that into reclaimed water and send it to the city of Cape Coral. Cape Coral needs a lot of reclaimed water. So you can see the magnitude of the benefits of collaboration. Same thing in Pasco County. We have a limit on our well withdrawal. It's growing tremendously. We produce our own water from the wells we have, but then it reaches a certain point and we open 5 interconnects with Pasco County. Extremely cost effective, right? In that they get to share their capacity, we pay them for it. That's kind of our operating model. Next. Okay, so 2 projects I wanted to highlight, again, because of the particular interest you have in here. One is American Beach, Nassau, which we currently have under construction now. That's both water and wastewater. It is on an island community, so I happen to think of you guys when I saw that. And then the Dunellen Chatmire community up in Marion County. Next. Okay, so protecting groundwater, well, here's the septic to sewer challenge. Just for any policy wonks, it's a big priority with the governor, with the legislature. There's more and more money being allocated by the state because of the blue-green algae, Lake Okeechobee, Indian River Lagoon. You read those stories. Well, that's usually because of some kind of contaminants in the groundwater, right? So they want to fix that stuff. We happen to be one of the recipients that are helping fix things everywhere from Lee County up to Nassau County. So it is a major priority even at the federal level. I'll show you a chart in a second, but there are 2.6 million permitted septic systems throughout Florida. I'm amazed at how many of those don't have any record of a permit. When we give a report, we say, here are the permitted systems and here are the suspected septic systems, because there's a building there and somebody's flushing it, but there's no record of a permit. The old adage, I remember, I've been in government for 45 years, everybody wants to go to heaven, but no one wants to die. Well, that's the story of why there are so many septic systems in the ground. Nobody wanted to pay, either from grants or loans or from special assessments on the owners. Now it's kind of come to a roost where it's causing algae contamination in our springs and whatnot, and we're in a catch-up mode. There is not enough state and federal money to basically eliminate the burdens from local government. Special assessments are invariably, because some local leveraging is needed. That's driven by the political flinch factor. I've worked for many elected officials over my career. And there are points where this seems to be a reasonable charge for this benefit to the public. And the local funding requirement is lessened for any special funding that might be allocated for environmental purposes or small disadvantaged communities. Next. So here's the Nassau American Beach. You can kind of look at the geography, it's kind of similar. There's the Atlantic Ocean there on one side, and they have no municipal sewer service, and they have no municipal water service. So Nassau County and the community basically said, can you help us build this stuff? I answered the question too quickly that sure we can. So we are now under construction in that community, bringing that after 25 years of them trying. And the key was, by the way, they don't want to pay a $25,000 per parcel assessment. So you get all this outside resources to drive that local cost down. That's the trick, frankly. And there are a lot of dollars there to be accessed. Next. Typical utility alignment, you guys probably know this. You've got the sewer line going down the middle of the road. You have to have it separated from the water line. And then you have laterals going out in both directions. That's the American Beach community where we're building now. Next. Funding streams, the most typical, the largest source is the Clean Water State Revolving Fund and the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. Those are numbers you'll see oftentimes mentioned. Everybody who is in this business generally goes to those sources because that's where the EPA is sending federal money down and the state is putting their money, and then there's some loaning or granting those out. There are special assessments are usually used to leverage those funding. If you have to have a pledged revenue to get low cost loans, they want to pledge, that's usually a special assessment on parcels. The recent flow of bipartisan infrastructure law, otherwise known as IIJA, Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act from the federal government, is huge. $50 billion increased to state programs that are then allocated to folks like us and you all. Next. Probably can't read that chart very well. The key is $3.5 billion from the EPA from that act for safe drinking water programs, $12 billion for clean water, which is wastewater, additional money for regional water bodies, and additional investments for lead-based contamination, things like that. So bottom line is there's a lot of money in the pipeline. My philosophy is I like to get in line before everybody else and help hopefully at the beginning of the line, which means you have to understand the process, right? How do I put forward a great candidate project that's going to compete well? Next. American Beach, this started out with a $9,000 per parcel assessment that the county adopted in order to leverage all of this money. And then we went to work trying to get as much money as we could. Because of that outside funding, there will be no special assessment on the property owners after taking into consideration all this other money we got. So that's just an illustration of how important it is. That's about an $18 million project. It's a combination of safe drinking water loans, in this case 0%, and then a big chunk of those are forgivable. I always like those kind of loans where you take a loan but you never have to pay it back. That's part of the program, depending upon your circumstance and the worth of your project. The US EPA jumped in and gave us a grant, $2.3 million. We secured all these funds for Nassau County, by the way, for American Beach. Next. So there's construction in progress. It's messy work. It's good to talk about it, good to see progress. But when you're bouncing through dirt and dust and mud, we try to get through it as quickly as we can. There's some manholes that are and sewer lines that are being installed now. It's about 320 parcels here, so it's not a big community, but it has been disadvantaged all these years. Everybody around it has sewer, they don't. Next. More pictures of construction progress. Next. Construction, next. Okay, so this is a big philosophical priority we have, which is engaging the public. I heard it was mentioned earlier, right? Before we even talked about assessments of the project, we went out and held these meetings out under a big tent with the community, explaining, here's the problem, here's the process, here's what it's gonna cost, here are the alternatives. It was discussed, about the alternatives for vacuum, gravity, whatever. The state requires you to do alternatives analysis to figure out which is the most cost effective, and then they fund those. So the joke here, as you can see, Taco Pope is the county manager sitting with his back to me. I'm standing at the microphone, and he drew this circle called trajectory of bombs, because obviously nobody likes to hear the cost of these projects, but it was important to them, so that process was incredibly important. We did have a referendum, asked people, would you pay $7,000 to $9,000 for new water and sewer? 86% of them said yes. I thought that was amazing, because I've been part of a lot of referenda, and I never saw that much support. So that kind of gave the tailwind of the project. Moving right along. Chatmeyer is a community in Marion County. You can see that's the Rainbow Springs and the Rainbow River, the spring shed for that river. It's getting polluted. The grass is dying because of the nitrogen loading. So we were asked to come in and see if we could solve that problem. Again, same thing, septic systems leaching into the groundwater, going into the spring. That project is 100% funded by FDP. That's why we put their logo there, including the connection from the curb to the house. Normally, the state or federal government don't pay for that. But in this case, everything's paid for by the state, impact fees, cost of construction, and private connections. Next. That's just an aerial picture of the community. Again, we're starting work on that shortly. You don't need to know how many lineal feet. It's just going to solve tremendous leachate problems going into that river. Next. This was ranked very highly by the state and the Water Management District. It's about an $8 million project. Right now, $7.5 million has been allocated 100% from state springs money, which is a special category. Next. So I thought this would just break up the monotony of just a boring sewer. Right? So does anybody recognize that character on the far left? Chick-fil-A, exactly. Okay, so that's the Chick-fil-A cow. Now, why do I mention that? Well, first of all, I think it's really cool that you can read a newspaper with hooves, right? It doesn't have any fingers. So. And then the ones on the right, you probably don't recognize that mascot, do you? You know what kind of animal that is? Armadillo. Okay, awesome. That is the mascot of Texas Roadhouse Grill. So first of all, and I think it's adorable, the picture of the young schoolgirl that's showing Arnie, the armadillo, of her class or school. That's just to show the difference in the way we work, we roll. We take our conservation knowledge, our engineers, go in the classrooms in elementary school, we have them compete on a conservation contest, right? Draw pictures of the water cycle, of reclaimed water, and then you get prizes, and those corporate sponsors provide the prizes to them. So again, I just thought I'd see if that got a smile from anybody. Because we like to break up the monotony. And I think that's it. I'll be happy to answer any questions, either now or later. Pleasure to come speak to you. And I grew up in Florida, raised my family here, so I happen to care about the environment and protecting our groundwater. So this has got a special personal attachment for me.
Thank you, Mr. Spratt.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions for Mr. Spratt?
No, I'm overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed. Yeah. That's why it gets so hot in here, got $30 million, got like, whew,
Yeah.
it's a lot of bucks. Did we turn the air conditioner down, by the way?
They just did.
So you come in and act as the utility for us, correct?
Yeah, kind of the owner's representative,
Right.
right? So we have a stable of engineers, there's 20 different engineering firms, depending upon where they are. These are specialized, if they reclaim water, if they're sewer. If they know the area better, we can just pluck them off of our list of engineers. They do a lot of our design. They usually know the gauntlet of FDP. So they have to do a facilities plan. They know all the process of justifying the project. And we supervise the engineers. There's a lot of folks, unfortunately, have their capital projects hijacked. And they're not really sure whether that's the right solution. So we just kind of stand in the middle of overseeing the design process and make sure that that is in the best interest of our partner government. Same thing with the construction contractor. Same thing with the financial grant seeking.
You have grant writers?
We pull all that stuff together. That's why FDP knows us, because they know our projects and they know we can put them to work. And special assessments. We also developed a methodology, legal methodology for adopting whatever local special assessment.
And I noticed on your map, you haven't worked with communities in Southeast Florida.
No, mainly you see the concentration in the waistband of the state. So that's where the hottest spots of septic tanks are. Because of the urbanized area down south here, again, I was in Miami-Dade, municipalities tend to have their own plants, right? They don't have as many septic systems as the more rural areas across from, North Fort Myers over to Daytona and septic. So that's where we've just been pulled in a lot of, been high demand to fix up those facilities. Small deteriorated systems like Dunellen, those are the kinds of places that have asked us for help because, again, it's expensive. They can't do it on their own. And so we actually negotiate the interlocal agreements for water supply, wastewater supply, to optimize the infrastructure that's there rather than build little fiefdoms. So, yeah, that's why. I mean, I had Miami-Dade, that was a big water sewer utility. Now, it had a consent order, so they're not without their problems, but they usually have big utility systems.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Neil.
Thanks, Neil.
Change the committee so they can.
We talked about that at the workshop.
Yeah, we do when we have the new commissioner next month, we bring it up and start the new committee over again. All right, let's move on to the announcements. Kelly, could you read the announcements, please?
The meeting schedule for the next month is as follows. Regular Town Commission meeting, Monday, June 5th at 6 p.m. The Town Commission Budget Workshop Special Town Commission meeting, Monday, June 5th at 2 p.m. Special Town Commission meeting, Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, Monday, May 15th at 8 a.m. Board of Adjustment meeting, Wednesday, May 17th at 9 a.m. And all meetings are held in the Commission chambers at the Town Hall. Town Hall will be closed on Monday, May 29th, 2023, in observance of Memorial Day. The town is hosting a blood drive event with One Blood on Friday, May 19th from 9:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. and Saturday, May 20th from 10:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. The bus will be parked behind the town hall, and all those who wish to donate blood can sign up through a link posted on the town's website. And any resident who wishes to sign up to receive important town notifications and news through Civic Ready should sign up on the town's website or call town hall for assistance.
All right, thank you. All right, time for public comment. Any comment on anything other than what's going to be on the agenda later on?
Terry Brown, Harbor Drive South. As I understand the rule regarding public records, that Kelly is the custodian of anything that we turn into her, that we want to retain in the town custody as a record. And I'm going to give Kelly this file to remain in her possession and in her control. It can be, of course, open for review by anybody. And I came up here last week, Kelly, if you would just pull the cover sheet out and just show them the detail that's in there. And talked about the $10,000 that Crown Colony owes this town. This file, and the other fellow that came up behind me, it was very confusing, said that they don't owe anything and they might owe $600, but he couldn't find a record of anything because somehow the public record had been scrubbed. Well, that public record wasn't scrubbed. This file contains all of the public meetings, all of the special meetings starting in February the 4th, 2019. It notes the the budget articles that the Coastal Star writes and mentions this $10,000 over and over again. It quotes, the file quotes the YouTube
video, audio. It quotes Steve Cause, it quotes Jeff Pugh. It quotes Jeff when he was shocked that the Crown Colony people hadn't paid the money that they said they would pay. And Steve is quoted at least twice saying that they do know they own it and they're working on plans to pay it. That's quoted. And you know the audio on YouTube tells you the exact minute and second that those comments were made. This file contains 15 meetings of where this was quoted. Now, someone came up here and said, I made a mistake, that I was wrong. Well, they made a mistake. Because that's a duplicate, by the way. That's another copy of that file. So it won't be shredded, it won't disappear, it won't be scrubbed. People need to look at that file carefully. And you need to collect the money from these people. And when they come back in here and ask for something else that's going to cost the town money, abandoning a road right away, putting up a gate, whatever they ask for, that's going to cost money. You're going to need legal review, you're going to need engineering review, you're going to need surveys. Make them pay in advance. We shouldn't pay for self-entitled, privileged people.
What?
Right. Please,
I'm far
please.
I'm far from self.
All right, if you want to have public comment. Hold on, everyone.
Frankly, I'm.
Hold on, excuse me, hello.
Name and all.
My name is
Name
Ron
and address.
Kern. I live at 5510 North Ocean Boulevard. I'm the treasurer of Crown Colony. I'm frankly sick and tired of this. This is a witch hunt that he's been taking on for I don't know what reason.
Personal attack.
Yeah,
I
Ron,
I didn't
Ron,
know you, did I?
excuse me, Mr. Kern,
Personal attack.
Mr. Kern,
Okay.
let's get back to,
So here's the, we know what the facts were. We know what we said. I don't care what he's got there, how many times it was mentioned. I don't care what the Coastal Star said because we weren't here for that. It doesn't matter. Right now, the truth of the matter is that it had to do with a specific time, okay, when we were very, very frustrated, okay, with the speed at which this was going on. 4 years it took us. And in that 4 years of time, we had multiple discussions. I came up here, I know others came up here to tell, please, what can we do? At one time, when we got the one of these obstacles thrown at us, we were frustrated enough. We got a quote, okay, that we needed new lighting. That quote, we didn't know what it was going to be. Former Commissioner Warshilik said that he had a friend in the business, and we asked him how much that cost. That has to be part of this record that's over there. Martin basically said that it could cost up to $10,000, at which point in time, we said, or more, which we said we would pay, we would share that with the town up to $10,000. It never even came in close to that. Okay, that's gotta be, you gotta have it in the records that were there. I don't know where to go from here on this. We are not, okay, we are not going, okay, to cough up $10,000 on something we don't believe we said or we need to. We would ask this commission, okay, to put this to bed. When we talk about we were working, when Vice Mayor Cos said we were working on a plan, this is true. When Lynn first started in here in a temporary position, okay, I called her up. This was after the meeting where it exploded with when you had the Coastal Star here. I said to her that I would like to have a meeting to discuss this. We were gonna work it out the first week in January. But a lot of stuff happened, okay, and we just couldn't get together to do that. We were going to work out exactly what I'm saying to you right here. That we were gonna go over the numbers, and we were gonna say, this is what we believe, and we were gonna keep our commitment. There are 250 people who live at Crown Colony that don't like to be called what was called to us in the Coastal Star, or this kind of foolishness that's going on right here, to try to get us to pay up $10,000. You all need to know also
that Crown Colony is under unbelievable financial pressure right now. We spent $650,000 on a seawall that is falling into the intercoastal waterway last year. We have to have that completely redone.
Mr. Kern,
No,
let's just do, let's,
I
wait a minute.
Go ahead.
Christie. So what we're gonna do, so I don't, we're gonna have to go back and forth again at another meeting. I'd ask the town commissioner, ask you look into this. Come up, look into the past, Mr. Brown's documents, Mr. Kern's testimony, and see what the real story is. Okay?
I would also add that the bills are available. So Lynn could provide the actual cost of these various things. You add it up, you split it in half for Crown Colony. Thank you, Ron. Everything Ron said was accurate.
Okay. So that's, should handle that. You can have that by the next meeting?
I will do my best.
Okay. Thank you. A little more public comment? Possible?
Stella Cole, 204 Beachway. On a different note, this town has been divided the past few years. And right now, I feel like we're having a rebirth. Never in all the years that I've been here have 9 people stepped up to try to be commissioner. 9 people to step up and say they would like to be on planning and zoning, and 5 people for Board of Adjustment. It seems that our residents care about us, they care about this town, and I want to applaud all of the residents who signed up to try to help us. I thank you all.
Thank you.
Betty Bingham, 1 East Ocean Avenue. Since we're discussing money, I would like to ask again for $1 for the rental of our property that the sidewalk is on. I only do this every so often, so you can't take it by squatters' rights or whatever. I don't care whether I get the $1 or not. And second, can someone tell me the exact definition of the ridge and the dunes? People have been asking me that evidently some kind of legislation has gone through. I thought the ridge was everything that was flat and the dune was what built up to it. But
Sounds like a
someone
good
can give me a
definition.
good definition, I think.
If anybody would know, Betty, you would know that.
Lisa Rototo, 4 Hudson Avenue, evening commissioners. So it was brought to my attention a few months ago before our last chief left. We were having a discussion one day, as we had many in recent months, but it came to my, I was aware of, and I know we're early in the year, but if there's any way that you guys can put in the budget for the staff and the police, so at the end of year, festivities, shall we say, for the staff and the police here, I would like the town to pay for them and not them have to pay for themselves to, and have an end of year luncheon or dinner or whatever it is that they so choose. So I really would like that to be, considered.
Thank you.
They deserve it. They do a lot for us.
Thank you.
My name and address. Okay. Marilee Lundquist, 6277 North Buchanan, before my, just, you're counting me. Anyway, 6277 North Ocean Boulevard, and I'm a 23-year property owner in Ocean Ridge. And I'm concerned that there's a lot happening in our country today. And sadly, 2 weeks ago, I discovered that there's a lot happening in Ocean Ridge. And I was wondering, is there a map of Ocean Ridge showing from every property? in,
Not that's easily accessible right now.
I asked Kelly, I emailed it to her to have it available.
isn't there
Yeah,
There it
that's
is.
it.
There it is. Thank you so much. Okay, I don't know if you can see it, but private property rights are a foundation of our democracy. And I know that you're going to be discussing Old Ocean properties later on, but there is ordinance 2020-5, which affects those properties and every oceanfront property in Ocean Ridge. Now, it was passed in September 2020 during COVID, over 2 years ago. Homeowners were not informed before this issue came up. Homeowners were not informed after the issue passed, and it affected every homeowner's property rights in a huge manner on the ocean. Now, this is really unusual for a town that informs about lost cats and dogs. And I think, I don't know if I missed a report in the Coastal Star, but nobody knew about it. And a lot has happened. There have been transactions that have happened. Now, I want you all during this meeting to look at, and I don't know if somebody can point out these lines to people. Can somebody point out the high water mark? Anybody? Well,
She's doing it.
Kelly's doing
It's
it.
hard to do, it's pretty,
Okay.
It's that dotted line.
yeah.
Okay, so this is the original line for calculation of your lot size. The yellow line is the 1979 coastal construction control line. And then there's a new line, which is called I think it's the coastal
96 coastal line.
96.
97.
Okay, so there's no construction supposed to be permitted without permission of DEP. And my whole home is east of that line, and most properties are east of that line, or even half of it. But this basically cuts our lot usable area into half. Now, Palm Beach went through this proposal in 1914, and they proposed to not include the beach. Ocean Ridges includes the beach, the dune, and the ridge. That is a no-go zone. So I believe it's a taking of property. I don't know what the reason for this would be. It destroys a lot of value for people and for the town. And I think this ordinance must be quietly and immediately rescinded because it's already, done harm to our town and its people. Thank you.
You're welcome. Now, just to let you know, we are speaking to that on number 15.
Yes, I know.
So we're speaking to that as well.
But the whole town is affected. It's not just Old Ocean.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Can we speak then too?
No,
Just now?
no, you can speak at that,
Yeah.
on that subject then.
Perfect.
Okay.
Wait, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, moving on. Thank you. Approval of the consent agenda. Has everybody looked at the consent agenda? Hear a motion?
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, motion is second. Any other discussion? Hearing none. Any public comment? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, moving on to the regular agenda items. First is the appointments to the open positions of the Board of Adjustment and Planning and Zoning. Now, I'd like to expand on what Stella Cole said, I'd like to thank everyone who's participated over all these years in being on these boards. It takes a lot of time, takes a lot of energy, and everything you do is for free. So you're doing it for the good of the town. And you can't say enough for the people that do that, because it really says a lot about the residents of this town. And in addition to that, in all the years I've been on this commission, I've never seen an outpouring of people coming up to put their names in and their basically their lives to be interrupted by these meetings and being involved in the town. And there was 15 people who did the planning and zoning, and there are 8 for the Board of Adjustment. That's
Unheard of.
I've never even seen that. Usually there's 5, maybe. Or we have to even call people to ask to please, hey, can you be on the board? And this is a sea change for the town, and it's really impressive. So to begin, I think we'll start out with the planning and zoning. And what I think we should do is basically, this is my opinion, is to give us whatever the balloting paper is, and we put 3 names on it for the 3 regular positions to start out. Agreed?
Public comment?
Sorry?
Public
No.
comment?
We already had public comment.
Well, on the agenda item, right?
On the agenda item will be after we do the voting, and there can be public comment. I mean, somebody want to come up and speak about public comment regarding this part of voting?
I do.
I mean, you know what? If you'd like to, let's go ahead.
I'll try to be brief. Good evening, commissioners. I have been a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission for the past 5 years. And I've learned a lot in the process. You certainly don't walk into that with the knowledge you need. I would like to speak and tell you a little bit about the 3 incumbents who have asked to be on this again. I'll start with Penny Kaczynski. Penny served as an alternate for many years and has been on the commission, I believe, since 2015. She comes with an extensive background in real estate development, and she is a real advocate for neighborhoods and the community. She lives in the beach area. She's an oceanfront property owner and is a great asset on the Planning and Zoning Commission. Neil Hannigan. As you saw Neil this evening, he is a data wizard. The things that he is able to bring and add in data to this commission has been very, very valuable. He knows the code very well. He served as an alternate before being on the commission and is a valuable asset. Mark Marsh, he's our North Star. Mark is an architect. He understands the process. We've all learned a great deal from Mark, and he's a great benefit. We have an open alternate position, and I would suggest that you find an excellent candidate. And so many people have come forth with great backgrounds. I can't say for sure, but I don't think any of these other candidates have sat through a whole Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, that they have come up to speak in public comment at Planning and Zoning Commissions. And it takes an apprenticeship before you sit in those chairs. And I don't plan to be reappointed in a year. And I would encourage you to get somebody that can fill my position. I can't speak for Dave, but he may not be reappointed next year either, or come up for reappointment. So what I would hope is that you reappoint these commissioners that sit here and function and have done so well, and that you bring people forward from this group to be the next generation. Thank you very much. I appreciate you listening to me.
Thank you. All right, more public comment on planning and zoning.
Dave Hutchins, 33 Arbor Drive North, regular member of the Planning and Zoning Commission. All of us got into the planning and zoning business usually at the encouragement of commissioners, and I was one of them. It's a job that, as Rick said, you don't really know too much about until you get into it. I was an alternate for 2 years, and then I became a regular member of the commission. The 3 members that are up tonight have unique strengths, and I hope you will consider them. Chairman Marsh and I don't often agree, but we disagree agreeably, and that's one thing that I think stands out with everybody who's been on the commission as long as I've been on it. That was Jerry Gorey's main thrust: disagree agreeably. Neil is excellent as a member on this commission. He has on his own gone through and looked at every lot in town. He's aware of the size of the lot, where it's at, buildings that are on it. He did that on his own. That's an asset that I think would be hard pressed to duplicate. Penny is the person who can take the thoughts we have when we're tasked with coming up with an ordinance and put it into a meaningful ordinance that we present to you as commissioners. So I hope you'll be thoughtful. There's plenty of people that want in, and they could be very well qualified, but like I said, you'll be losing some real talent if there's a wholesale turnover. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Terry Brown, Harbor Drive South. If it was the criteria that the person who comes up and makes public comments get appointed, I get appointed. And I go to most of the meetings, but I didn't put it for planning and zoning. But I do support the position of the 3 incumbents. I've been there, I've seen there, and Mark Marsh, I don't agree always with where he wants to put a window, but he is a rock. I mean, we are in good shape with him as a leader, and the other 2 as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Moving on to the commission, you want to pass out the ballot?
So, just to clarify, we're voting for 3 and then we do the alternate vote afterwards?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, did I sign? I had to make sure my name on it.
All right, it was unanimous with P. Shields Ferber, Ferenc, I'm sorry if I butcher your names, Furek, Stephen Varga, and Sydney M. Ray.
Could you speak up? I did not hear one of those names you said.
Ferber, Varga, and Ray.
All 3?
All 3 unanimous.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we'll go ahead and pass the for the alternate.
Again, unanimous. Mark De Baptiste.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to the Board of Adjustment, public comment. No public comment on Board of Adjustment? Okay.
Get the commissioner. Is there anybody that's applied? There's two sets of terms here. There's 2 3-year terms and 1 1-year term. So if anybody's applying, has a preference, they want the 1-year term versus the 3, speak up now. What?
I've submitted my name. Terry Brown, Harvard ISOP. I served on the board for 10 years prior, so I'm pretty familiar with. If you're talking about an option for just a 1-year service and then leave the Board of Adjustments, is that what you're?
Yeah, because it's staying where
Yeah, you
Commissioner
could
Cass.
put me on that list if you want to separate that, if you want to select me.
This is a campaign speech. Thank you, Terry. Anyone else? All right,
Do you want to do the 2 candidates for the 3-year first?
same way, yeah.
Yeah.
What?
Okay, we have unanimous again. Victor Martell and Betty Bingham.
All right. Do the 1 year.
You should probably tell. They can, again, it's not 1 year, they can then reapply.
Okay, unanimous again. Arthur Zeeb.
He's a good guy.
All right. This way.
I'm sorry, Jeff. Jerry Lowry, 2 Arbor Road. For some of us who have a little hearing issue, I could not even catch all the names of the people that were appointed. I heard a couple of last names. Could you instruct the clerk to read the names of everyone who was appointed to these positions?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jerry.
For Board of Adjustment, for the 2 3-year terms is Betty Bingham and Victor Martell. For the Board of Adjustment, the 1 position for a 1-year term is Arthur Zeeb. For the Planning and Zoning, the 3-year terms is P. Shields Ferber, Stephen Varga, and Sydney M. Ray. For the alternate is Mark De Baptiste.
Thank you. Get that?
Yep.
All right. Let's move on to the Appointment of the open positions to the town commission. Again, the applicants were many, and we really appreciate them applying. Is there any public comment before we begin? Hearing none. Kelly?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I would point out that with Mr. Martell having been appointed to the Board of Adjustment, I would ask the town attorney, does that disqualify him for the town commission?
Yes, it does.
Part seven as well then?
Yeah, we have it marked out.
Part seven. By the way, you climb.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, it was unanimous again. Philip Bessler and Kenneth Cleo.
All right, I guess I would ask Mr. Betzler and Mr. Khalil to come up, and we're going to get sworn in, because they'll be immediately taking their seats at the dais.
I state your name.
I, Phil Bessler,
Do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm. Okay, together? Okay.
that I will support, protect, and defend
That I will support, protect, and defend
the Constitution and government
the Constitution and government
of the United States
of the United States
and the state of Florida
and the state of Florida
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
domestic or foreign,
domestic or foreign,
that I will bear true faith,
that I bear true faith,
loyalty, and allegiance to the same,
loyalty, and allegiance to the same.
that I am entitled to hold office
I am entitled to hold office
of the state of Florida,
of the state of Florida,
that I will faithfully perform
that I faithfully perform
all the duties
all the duties
of the office of town commission
of the office of the town commission
of the town of Ocean Ridge, Florida,
of the town of Ocean Ridge, Florida,
on which I may about to enter.
which I'm about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
You want us to come up now? Thank you.
You guys, give you a minute to look up item 9.
It's a second reading.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I just want to say thank you to everybody who put their names in for a position. We were truly overwhelmed with the interest, and having gotten to know all of you during the campaign, I can say that it's just truly heartwarming, all this interest, and, you know, that everyone wants what's best for Ocean Ridge, and thank you.
In fact, I did just add to that. The level of talent in this town, there was, I don't know where they were, but that came out for this is when you go through these resumes, you've got to truly be amazed at the talented people that we have here as fellow residents.
And we have 2 positions next year on each board, so stay involved.
All right. Thank you. All right, let's move on to item number 9, the second reading of ordinance number 2022-14, an ordinance of the Town Commission of the Town of Ocean Ridge, Florida, approving a zoning change request for a parcel of land consisting of 9.13 acres, more or less located northwest of Town Hall along the Intercoastal Waterway, west of North Ocean Boulevard, and more particularly described therein from single-family residence SFR zoning district to Preservation Conservation PC zoning district, and providing for changes to the official zoning map, repeal of conflicting ordinances, severability, and an effective date. Christie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
for reading the ordinance by title. This is second reading of the rezoning. It's a companion ordinance to the second reading that we did last month for the comprehensive plan amendment. This is to actually rezone the zoning district from residential to preservation conservation for the property that the town purchased last year. It's partially submerged now, just west of Town Hall. The second reading that was passed on the last meeting was the comprehensive plan amendment to change the land use designation. This now makes the zoning consistent with those land use designations.
Okay. Any public comment? All right, hearing none. Commission?
Think it's a great idea.
Make a motion?
Oh, sorry. Make a motion to pass it.
Second.
There's a motion and a second?
You gotta label the ordinance in the motion.
Ordinance number 2022-14.
Thank you. Motion and second. Any other
Second.
Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, moving on to number 10, building permit fund request for 5831 North Ocean Boulevard, Unit D1. Christie, is this you? Or, go ahead, Lynn.
All right, the property owner at 5831 North Ocean, Unit D1, application or permit number 22478 has requested a refund of the permit fees per Town Code Section 67-58D1 in the amount of $2971.88. The remodeling and renovation permit had an application date of March 29th, 22. The request for permit cancellation was approved on April 13th of 2023, and I've attached the property owner's request. Per our normal standard, they would only be permitted 70% of the permit fee, which would be $1,802.50, because they would not be allowed the BIF or DCA surcharges, the plan review fees, or the scanning fees of that $29.71.88. This permit, the reason they are asking for the refund is they originally were only going to do a kitchen, a master bath, bedroom, and I believe closet renovation. They have since decided to do a full renovation of the unit. And so they are asking for a refund on the permit so that they can resubmit to do a full renovation of the unit.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
Move the refund.
Have they submitted plans yet for the full renovation?
They haven't, they're still working on those.
Is this a typo in here where it says 2022?
No.
Okay, so has the town spent any of this money? BIF, DCA, plan review fee, scanning fee?
The BIF DCA fees are fees that we submit to the county. So yes, we have spent those. The
Yeah.
plan review fee, yes, we did spend. And the scanning fees are the fees that we incur as administrative fees to scan and review all the plans, as well as the 30% are fees that, again, it's the administrative fees that we normally keep.
So I'm just looking at the town's hard costs.
Yes.
Right.
So what are the town, should we add $64, $257.75 and subtract it from the 2971? Or should we also subtract
Plus
30?
the 30% of the building fees.
So it comes at 1802.50.
Right, the 1802.50 is what we would refund to them.
How often do we refund 100% versus 70?
Never.
Never.
All right, what's the pleasure, commission?
Make a motion to, whatever I do, approve the refunding of $1,802.50 on item number 10 on the agenda.
I'll second it.
Here's motion and second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right. Let's move on to discussion on beach sign ordinance. Christie.
Mr. Mayor, in the backup is a draft ordinance for tonight's discussion. The reason it's on discussion is twofold. One, we have advertising requirements that we'll have to meet. And secondly, I want to make sure that the parameters that are included, the commission is happy with those parameters, because I feel like if we make a change to those parameters, we might have to go back to first reading if tonight was first reading. So in the actual body of the ordinance, in subsection C is really the meat and the heart of this ordinance regarding what will be required specifically for beach signs and their placement. These are time, place, and manner restrictions that usually get upheld by a challenge to a First Amendment analysis. So you can see in subsection C, the heart of the ordinance regarding the location, the content, the size, and also that it would have to be sort of a uniform nature and appearance. The ordinance went to Planning and Zoning Board for their review, and at their review, they made a change. Usually with the sign ordinance, you have an amortization schedule where you're changing your sign ordinance, so those signs you're making non-conforming, you give them a period of time to replace their signs. I had proposed 6 months, Planning and Zoning Board wanted it to be less amount of time, they said 30 days. The town manager suggested 60 for enforcement purposes. So the draft ordinance before you for discussion has a 60-day time frame. That signs that are currently on the beach that this ordinance would make non-conforming, they would have 60 days, if adopted, to be removed.
Okay, thank you, Kristen.
You're welcome.
Questions? Public comment? All right, moving back to the commission?
Yes.
Hold on.
So this
Well,
would
I
be 60
have one.
Let's start out with, to the left first.
The 60 days is just to remove them, not to replace them?
They could certainly replace them and with something that is conforming and apply for a permit to have signs in. But if this ordinance makes their sign non-conforming, they would have 60 days after adoption to then remove it.
I think that's a little quick to get a sign fixed and changed. And there's some safety signs here that may be applicable, right?
The ordinance exempts any really governmental signs, so the town signs, county signs, state signs, or other signs that are required to be posted by regulation are exempt from this ordinance.
I think that's a little quick for it to remove a sign or remove something within 60 days and have an expectation that it's gonna be replaced in short order after they had notice of it and replaced. I think that's a little quick.
So I think one thing taken into account, they're not really necessarily removing the sign, they're moving them. So they already have the sign, it's just in an inappropriate location. So they'd be moving it back to where this ordinance puts it. I did have one question. A new, right after the 60 days, Christie, a new permit will be required for all such non-conforming signs. But we won't have any non-conforming signs, right?
The intent of that language is if, for example, if you have a sign right now that someone had just handwritten something on the sign, this ordinance will make it non-conforming. So they'd have to apply for a permit and provide what's gonna be the conforming sign.
Okay, so it's nothing to do with location, it's the actual physical look of the sign.
Right, it would still have to meet everything else that requires this new
It's
ordinance.
the size. If you look at the, in
So you can't.
C1,
I don't think.
it's size, it's other things as well. Supporting structure, it's all of that. So, and they have to get a permit, and then it has to get approved, and then it has to go back, and we're expecting all that within 60 days and built.
The only problem you have is really Mo's sign company, so it's really slow.
Phil?
Do we have, does the beach properties all have clear title now? Has that all been straightened out? Because I remember the 52 Club had an issue. I think think the garden club maybe owns it, or the town owns it? Like, how would we do that if there was a problem with the title? Or is there no problems anymore? Has that all been straightened out? Well, I know even Beachway, right? Some people think they own Beachway and some people think they don't.
No, we're pretty clear. We know what's going on. There's fee simple owners at Beachway.
So you guys,
No, have a problem.
all those people own it? Own the beach, that area?
No, there's fee simple owners, and then there's access and reasonable use.
Right.
What do you call it?
Customary.
No, the word when you have something added to your
Easement? Easement? Okay. Well, I'm just saying, so there's no confusion, that's all I'm saying, like, how would that be straightened out? So if, they'd have to come for a permit, so then they'd have to prove that they own it, right? Is that basically how it would work?
Yes,
Yes.
that's correct.
All right, so if there is a problem, then they can't put a sign up until they straighten that problem out, right? All right.
So on a different matter, then we'll get back to Ken's tiny thing. I have one tiny fix, which I don't think causes you issues, I hope. So A1, I'm looking at the memorandum. Signs are not allowed to be erected or placed on the beach.
Yes.
Right, so it says erosion control, seaward of the toe of the frontal dune. Then it goes on to say, or seawall. I think you need to put toe of the seawall, otherwise people are gonna be plastering these on their seawall, right? If you can't put it, seaward of the seawall, where are you gonna put your sign? You see what I'm saying?
On the seawall itself, I guess.
Right?
And that's up to your discretion. If you don't want to authorize signs on seawalls, then we could certainly remove that as a location.
If they have stairs, they can put the sign on the stairs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that would be east of the seawall. See what I'm getting at? That's why I was trying to introduce the word toe, because then they could have it on the seawall, they could have it on the stairs that pokes down into the,
You'd almost have to say, or a seawall or a toe of the seawall.
yeah,
You have to say it twice.
okay. Does that work for you? Seawall or toe of the seawall?
Toe of the seawall sign?
Because some of the seawalls are so high that the sign would not be able to.
Okay.
Right, any other
And I
discussion?
think about the 60 days, I mean, it's 60 days to remove non-conforming signs, correct? Like signs that are in the wrong place or that don't meet the new guidelines. If they want to apply for a permit to have conforming replacement signs, then it could take a little bit longer. I mean, in that respect, I don't think the 60 days is too tight.
So I'm getting is that you're saying is that maybe the 60 days removal, but then 6 months to get them back up?
However long it takes you to get a permit, you do it, right?
Right, so the right now is written, once this is adopted, there would be a 60-day grace period. So non-conforming signs could remain in place for a period of 60 days. Once after that 60 days, they either have to remove the signs or we would have to start some type of enforcement measure, community standards enforcement or something like that. So that's the time frame. Now, for adoption of this, you'd have first reading, second reading. So this is not going to, if adopted, go into effect for 2 months.
Okay. Well, so basically, hey, you're saying we got to remove the sign within 60 days, but during that 60 days, you can always come apply for a permit. If the permit takes 4 months to put the sign up, the fact that it's actually in the town hall under permit, getting a permit should preclude the fact that when they finally get it, it goes up, because right now permits are taking a little while in our town to get.
So we're promoting an enforcement of an issue that we know that we're not gonna be able to have complied with. Think about it.
Well, enforcement of the removal.
I know, but some of these signs are, they might be safety signs, I don't know.
I
There's
thought Christie
other
said
things
that those were.
might be for the safety for their home or residence or whatever the case may be. Maybe other signs. I mean, without knowing exactly what the sign is, we have to think of whatever the sign could be, that's how it should be applied. So, in looking at it, 60 days is reasonable now, knowing that we're not even be able to turn around a permit, whether we're gonna be able to do some of this stuff then we have to start, like you said, an enforcement action. We really need to be put in that position. Is that enough time?
So
That's the
how much
issue.
time would you suggest?
I mean, I think they came up with, Lynn said 6 months, is that what you?
No, that was Christie.
Excuse me, excuse me.
Okay, the
Excuse me,
draft
folks.
said 6 months. So, so there's, somewhere in between probably lies the truth. How long does it take for them to get a permit?
Right now, we're getting them out generally in less than a week from the time.
Okay, for a sign permit, somebody can come in and get a permit. And that includes putting, if it's a PVC pipe or whatever the case may be, they can get it in the ground relatively quickly.
Correct.
Okay.
But I think what the point that Christie was trying to make is that it takes 2 readings to do this ordinance, which is a minimum of 2 months. People have the opportunity now to determine whether or not they're going to be conforming or non-conforming as we're going through this adoption process. So essentially, we're giving them 4 months right now.
We're giving maybe a 1 month warning.
Well, we're giving
Right.
them,
Give them a 1 month warning that assuming this gets passed. So we want them to go ahead and start planning, assuming that this is going to get passed. Okay.
Right.
I will be getting a public notice out to all oceanfront owners about this, correct?
We can, keeping in mind that when we talk about sending out individual property owner notices, we haven't budgeted postage for those types of notifications. So when we talk about sending out mailings, that's paper, that's envelopes,
Okay, but
that's.
I just think in light of recent things that have happened, anyone who's gonna be, conceivably not in compliance should get a notice that this is happening.
And I understand that, but if this is a direction that the commission wants to go in the future, that every time we pass any type of ordinance that's going to affect property owners and property rights, we need to budget effectively for that cost, because postage isn't free.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes.
For this ordinance, it requires 2 newspaper notices. So a notice will go out before first reading, a notice will go out before second reading regarding this change. Maybe perhaps through Civic Rayleigh, or we can do a notice that way as well, and so that we might reach more people instead of separate mailings. That would help.
Do you have the emails for the oceanfront owners?
There is no certainty that we have current email addresses for specific property owners, no. It's not a requirement that they provide us with email addresses.
Well, we're looking at the problem with the Anna Street and all that because of no notice. And we should definitely then put it in the budget coming up. Personally, I think if I don't attend the meetings and I don't read Civic Ready, and maybe I don't read I do read the newspaper, but we don't put it out there enough and the homeowner doesn't know and they don't realize they're actually in non-compliance until somebody knocks on their door. I think it'd be a good idea for the town to notify the residents if something's going on that they should know about. And if it's gonna cost us some postage, it's gonna cost us some postage, but yeah, I think it's something that we need to as a town, so we don't go and get into problems down the road like we're dealing with Anna Street, and we're dealing with other ordinance that come up that this body makes up and passes without, it's legal what we do, but is it right for our town?
I understand and I recognize that. I'm just saying, as we're going through a budget process, these are things to take into consideration. And the next question, because we are a town in which property owners, the addresses we have are not always the Ocean Ridge address, because the address we have is through Papa. Do you want notices sent to the address that their tax bills go to, or to their Ocean Ridge address, or to both?
Lynn, this stuff that we can determine later when we're in a budget. We're getting into the weeds now, right now. But the point is that you just want to notice people on whatever address, at least we tried. Okay? If it goes to whatever address, it doesn't get to them, hey, we tried other means that most municipalities would not.
Okay.
Okay, so let's get back to the sign ordinance. So are we comfortable with the 60? Do you want to go 90 to split the baby here?
I go along with at least 90.
I mean,
Fine with me,
90.
all right, so
You happy, Ken?
Well, yeah, there's an element of realism that you have to employ. and
But
I
if you've
think
already
it's-
been warned, but we don't know if they've been warned during the first reading and the second reading, so they really get 120 days.
I mean, we're telling them how that, I'm okay with this, but we're telling them that how to build it, what it has to be made of, et cetera, et cetera. So there is a process there that people have to go through. And I think it's just to assume that it can be done quickly. And depending upon if it's an association, they have to go through their processes. So I mean, I think we gotta be realistic about this, so we're not running out and enforcing things unduly.
So how
I
do
want it
we?
done, but it's
So-
just reasonable.
who wants to make a motion for this?
So Christie, does the motion have to include the amendments to A1 as discussed and the amendments to
Mr. Mayor, it's just a
5C?
discussion, so if the consensus is to make those changes, we'll make those changes and bring it back for first reading.
Okay,
Okay.
let's do that.
No, it's just discussion.
All right, then that's a consensus, everybody's on board?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. Discussion regarding a plan to remove bulletproof protective glass at the counter windows in the town hall lobby. Steve?
So this, don't believe what you're reading. I wrote it. So I went through this with the police chief and town manager Lynn, spent some time walking through the actual architectural arrangement of it. So we're gonna start in baby steps. I'm not a fan of bulletproof glass. I don't think most residents are fans of bulletproof glass. So as the first baby step, we're just going to simply ask the staff to more generously keep the sliding window open. It's very simple for it to open. It gives a good, almost 3 foot, 2.5 foot window you can talk to without screaming. It's kind of funny, during the course of this, somebody on staff was complaining about spittle on the outside glass. The reason why there's spittle on the outside glass is because the residents are having to scream through bulletproof glass. So the staff is being instructed to, if you walk in, if Terry walks in, they open the window.
We keep that glass closed. I mean, a lot tight.
If somebody comes in that they don't recognize, they'll have it closed. If they're nervous, they close it. But if generally a resident walks in, it'll be open, so communications will be simpler. That's the first step, and in the coming months, we'll figure out some other steps. The reason for not removing the bulletproof glass instantly is there's some considerations, believe it or not, of servers. That the town offices use the same servers as the police, and you have to have a certain amount of lockdown on your servers if they're connected to your police department. But we will solve that problem. So,
You still gotta keep this.
Wait. On to public comment. All right, you done, Steve?
Yeah.
Public comment.
No, I just wanted to be sure that you, Terry Brown, Harbor staff, you gotta keep the security door secure, walking into the back of the building.
yes,
Good, because that would be crazy if you open that,
be
because
critical.
we got some crazy people living here.
Wow. Any other public comment?
I'm like Stella Cole, 204 Beachway, maybe a little dense. Explain it to me why we need that bulletproof glass, that you can't remove it completely?
It took me 10 or 15 minutes to understand this, and correct me
Okay,
if
you
I'm
don't have the time.
If somebody jumps over the counter, they could conceivably hack into the computer system through a computer in the lobby offices.
And we've had
And
this.
that server is connected to the police department, so it has to be fully secured. Even though for decades,
But that server has always been connected to the
Correct.
police department.
Yes.
And no one has ever done this.
let's just say
So we're
maybe
just
the
saying we're just
FDLE has
doing
tightened
this.
down the rules on this.
Okay, this does not seem friendly to me.
It's not.
And what the atmosphere of this town is. Thank
We're
you.
trying to get back
Open
to
the
what
window,
you-
we're gonna open the window.
Right. So if I can continue on, unless somebody else comment, the next one we don't have to discuss, because discussion the plan to reconfigure town hall was based upon the bulletproof glass. So it's a non-event.
All right. So any public comment on the non-event? All right, so moving on, so right now it's leaving the window open.
Correct.
If they know that the person is coming in.
Correct. They recognize.
All right, so moving on to number 14, discussion regarding raking seaweed from the beach to tow the dune to facilitate dune renourishment.
Okay, so those of you that spend time at the beach, you've probably seen the tractor guy going by. And I stopped him and I asked him, at the Beachway area for, let's say, a half-mile stretch, there's a lot of seaweed that came up in the past weeks, and I think there's more on its way. So I asked him about if we can get him to take the seaweed, and the wind's already blown a lot of it closer to dune, and scoop it and press it into our dune where we have tremendous erosion down there. If any of you guys walk the beach, I think the south end of town's got the worst erosion, probably because the north end has more seawalls. But the guy says, yeah, and he actually pointed down the beach. I went down for like a quarter mile, and he said, I did it right here. But they requested, and they were more clever than we are, they requested it before turtle season. So he could take all the seaweed, put it at the edge of the dune, then he sprinkled sand on it, and they've already recovered 20% of their dune that was lost. Let's say we lost 40 to 50% of the dunes down there. So he says he can do it, but the DEP, he can't do it till after turtle season. So I asked Lynn if she could please call the DEP, because there's no turtle nest currently. There's one down on the far south side. And even if there were some turtle nests, he's fully capable of navigating around them, to ask if we could get special permission to do this, because if we wait till the end of turtle season and another storm hits like that, we're gonna lose the entire dune. It's not gonna do us any good to do this after hurricane season. So Lynn had some encouraging news from the DEP that I last heard about 4 or 5 hours ago.
Yes, when I spoke to the DEP contact last week, he said it is permitted year-round with a field permit and in coordination with the sea turtle individuals. So that is something that we could do. I also discussed it with the town attorney. If the town were to take this on, it is something that the property owners would have to sign a hold harmless agreement with, just as with any other situation. It would be an unbudgeted expense, but we can reach out and find some individuals that do this type of work, get some cost estimates if this is something the town is interested in. If it does not exceed my spending authority for a one-time expense, it is something that we could do in the coming weeks before the next meeting.
What's the pleasure of the commission?
Well, we want to spend money for private land. Is that a good idea?
To protect the town, absolutely.
But are we protecting the town or the individual property owners?
If those dunes are breached, I've been here since '85. We lost half the dune down there, half it. And if a big storm, and that wasn't even a hurricane.
You talking about Beachway?
Yeah.
You think you lost half
Yes,
your
we
dune?
did. We did. The coconut trees that were there and all that are gone. So one more, if a real storm comes in there, I don't know what's configured as far as these micro currents they talk about when people remove groins and things like that. We could be in serious trouble. Like serious trouble. That dune gets washed away any further. So I think it's imperative we do it quickly. I think it's imperative that we go across the town and see where we can take advantage of this natural seaweed and move forward with it. I do know, and there's probably some residents here that have their beaches raked. He's very inexpensive. I think somebody from Beachway maybe could correct me. He charged us like $1,100 for an entire year.
Yeah, we pay $128 a month for 100 feet.
Well, let's hold on a minute. You guys see. We'll do public comment and they can tell us how much they pay. Any
Okay.
public comment?
Oh, I didn't see this.
Yes, ma'am.
The seaweed is the best defense against the storm because it is nutrition for the grasses that grow along the beach. It makes your dunes grow faster and stronger and it will hold it longer or store, but I suggested right along that we wake all that seaweed up and do.
Yeah, you've been saying that for years, Betty.
Yeah, my son, by the way, majored in this.
Terry Brown, Harvard Ave South. I don't know if you've seen the aerial maps of this Sargassum Sea. It's larger in the entire United States of America. And it's moving up this way. And they just had a big report on one of the national news. You rake it, might be good, you might miss the turtle nest and all that, but you're gonna get more and more and more. And you're just wasting your money. You're throwing your money away. You want to move it up to the dune, and I appreciate that. But it's coming, and it's never going to stop. I mean, anyone will tell you that if they looked at the maps. The map's out there. NOAA has a map.
Thank you, Terry. Any other public comment?
That's ridiculous.
Robert Sloan, 6550 North Ocean Boulevard. Are you aware that when seaweed rots, it smells? And if you keep it exposed, it will smell. The only thing that gets rid of the odor is lemon juice. Or we can bring in a herd of goats, because goats love to eat seaweed. But be careful if you leave it exposed.
Thank you. Polly?
Isn't this lovely? Polly Joe at 35 Hersey Drive. I have two comments. I'd look for a grant for dune restoration, see if anything's available to help with that cost. And this triggered another question for me. When Steve's talking about the dune erosion. Okay, so on the beach signs, if you put a sign at the toe of the dune and the dune moves back, you have to move your sign.
According to the new ordinance, yes.
I think you better think about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
By the way, as far as more seaweed coming, that helps us, because we have more seaweed to save the dune with.
Ron Kern, 5510 North Ocean. We pay Universal Beach Services $105 a month to take the seaweed from that sliver that we have between the two. Are you suggesting that you're looking to have someone do this entire beach from Beachway South?
Whoever needs it, I don't know, that down there's some seawalls, right, that duplex. There's maybe some areas that did fine.
Well, I know on one side of us, they don't take it. It's kind of like a haircut. We take it and we remove it, and that side stays with the seaweed on it.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Hey, Ron, how much property do you own? What's your sliver for the $105?
It's no more than, I'm gonna say 30 feet wide, something like that.
All right.
This would be a one-on.
Yeah, I mean, we have 100, we only pay 128. So.
Public comment?
Stella, I think you're all missing the point. We're not trying to clean the beach of seaweed. We're trying to get whatever seaweed is there now to be put onto the dunes. The guy's gonna throw sand on there. The dunes are gonna build. Whenever this whole seaweed comes, that's this, the size of the US, let it come. We're not planning on doing this as all the time. We're just trying to build up the dune. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? All right, and then back to the commission.
Lynn, there is an easement that goes all the way down from the inlet, down past the southernmost groin. Will you look up, it should be in the record, it was when they put in the groins and did the beach renourishment. We had to go down and all the property owners along the beach had to sign an easement and grant for the dune renourishment and for the beach renourishment. So all those homeowners and property owners along there had to sign it over. There was only one that didn't, and then that's when the pool, if you've been here long enough, behind Marilee Lundquist's house, he wouldn't agree, and he had a little pool there. But I think ultimately they did go along with it. So if you could check into that easement and see what rights we might have to piggyback on that, that could solve getting the hold harmless. Again, some of those properties are privately owned, so we just can't go dumping things as a government on private properties. So unless we have some right or some easement to do so, or some permission, that's the only way that's gonna work. And so, with that in mind, anytime you do something like this, there should be an estimated cost associated with doing that, because there might be, given the past history of trying to get this accomplished, it took a long time for us to get that beach renourishment easement all the way down. I can tell you that because I was involved in it. It wasn't just a slam dunk, you'd be surprised. But, so if you could look in that before we make a decision, that would be helpful, and then you can come back to the commission. You just can't do it. We just, there needs more information.
Right, but what we don't want to have happen here is this gets delayed and delayed, because hurricane season will be here, and if we haven't acted on it, this entire exercise is futile.
Well, maybe in the future, when this is something like this brought up, maybe as part of the requirement, and this goes back to a couple other items, bring an estimated cost. In fact, that's legislation coming down, that in order to do anything, you better have an estimated cost associated with it. I think that would be helpful. We used to do that, so maybe we can do that again.
All right. Does that have the consensus of the commission?
Yeah.
Okay, so you know what you have to do, Lynn?
Yep.
All righty. Thank you. All right, let's move on to discussion of the draft ordinance language for Old Ocean Boulevard lots between Anna and Corinne Streets. Christie?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you may recall, we've talked about this a couple of times. The direction to the Planning and Zoning Commission from the Town Commission at its last meeting was to revisit the ordinance 2020-05 to see if that should be repealed or something else done to address the issue that's come up with the properties on Old Ocean between Anna and Corinne Street, specifically whether or not those properties should be made non-conforming, whether or not the properties on the east side of Old Ocean should be addressed due to the impacts of 2020-05 on the usable size of those lots. So what I did, based on the different discussions that have happened before the Town Commission and the Planning and Zoning Commission, was that I took some of the language that initially was drafted by the property owner at 6073 Old Ocean. We proposed a text amendment, which was denied, to take some of that language and the other language from the discussion of these items, and I took a stab at creating an ordinance that did two main things. The first thing it did was there's, for all the lots in this area, really except for two, it makes all the lots non-conforming in terms of whether each lot is non-conforming as to lot size, lot width, or lot depth. And it made them non-conforming, and what that does is it allows for those properties to be redeveloped to either their current footprint or to be redeveloped if they match all the requirements that currently exist in the RC zoning district. So that's for all the properties. There's two properties that are outside this ordinance. The two parcels that are on the very north end of Old Ocean in this area, those parcels are still owned by the same property owner, both on the west side of Old Ocean and on the east side of Old Ocean. So that property is conforming for purposes of really this discussion, so they're outside the ordinance. The parcel on the furthest, the south end on the west side of Old Ocean, that lot is currently conforming for the RC requirements, so they're not included in this. The rest of the lots are all included and would now become non-conforming for those three things, depending on which affected them, perhaps all. The second thing that this ordinance does, it specifically addresses the properties on the east side of Old Ocean. And what it does is it uses current language in the code. There's an ocean view special area that grants a higher floor area ratio than elsewhere in the RC or the residential zoning districts. And it gives other consideration for smaller lot size. Using that language and language also in the town area, the total floor area ratio overlay, using that language, I tried to create a bigger scope for those properties in terms of their ability to redevelop with granting them some additional bonuses that could be granted through the Planning and Zoning Commission to allow them to build a little bit larger than what would currently be allowed under code. So that's what I came up with. There's other specific issues with it, but trying to find a compromise because it does seem like we keep kind of going in circles with this issue. There's a lot of different ways to try to, address this issue, but was coming up with something that perhaps could start the discussion and maybe give us a pathway forward to actually have an ordinance we could adopt. Alternatively, could hire a consultant to study this, do it as part of your ear-based amendment that you're gonna need to do sooner rather than later for your comprehensive plan. That's a more of a long-range sort of planning way of addressing this issue. This is to maybe address it sooner rather than later.
Okay. Public comment.
Hi, Brett Barish, I'm at 6275 North Ocean. First, I want to thank you all. You're all doing a wonderful job. So it's a lot of hard work and a lot of opinions. We just moved here a year and a half ago. And we love it, absolutely love it. Love the town, love the people we've met. We're happy that we're contributing to the town. I think based on our purchase price, we've increased our taxes 4 or 5 times to the town. We have 6 kids, 5 of which are between the ages of 2 and 9. And unfortunately, in Florida, you don't have something called basements. We were looking to add some more space to the house because we need a family room. And we contacted Randy Sofit, who is a builder in the area. And Randy came out and looked at the house and said, Brett, where you want to do this, it's within your footprint, it's not an issue. And then he came back a couple weeks later and said, Brett, there's a crazy ordinance, this 2020-5, what you're talking about. We are not at or between the streets of, what is it? We're not in that streets, but we have the same exact issue. And what Marilee put up on the wall, to me, everybody in this town should have that issue. Because what's happened is you've lowered my property value significantly, by a third, by a half. I don't know why I'm paying as much taxes anymore. That's ridiculous. I should be fighting for less taxes now. I think everybody in the town who lives on the water should be fighting to get money back on their lost value of their homes. I think it's ridiculous. I don't know what the consequences were. I don't know why. That's the other part I don't understand. And we came in late. So we came in a year and a half ago. But I've asked everybody about why this has happened, and I can't really figure out why. My understanding is it happened in 2020 during COVID, who knows why. I think it's a great idea to send out mailers to everybody's home. I think my taxes alone will pay for that for the next 100 years to this town. But I think it's a great idea to let people know, but it has to be, it's an issue for me, it's an issue for Marilee, it'll be an issue for the child. It's an issue for anybody who lives on the water. And I implore everybody in the town, if everyone's home was cut back on the square footage you could build by another third or a half, the whole town would have this issue. So to me, I think the biggest thing would be just get rid of this thing. I think it's, I don't know why it was put in place, but we're coming down the same path as the Pappas, I think that's the family name, owns that house, along Corin and Anna. But we have the same exact issue. So I hope you guys will consider this. Anyways, thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Hold on, we got a lady behind.
Hi, Mary Ann Emanuel, 33 Sable Island Drive. I just really have a question. Mary Ann Emanuel, 33 Sable Island Drive, and I just have a question. By the way, a lot of great work, so thank you for all of this. when I see rear setback of 0 feet, I'm not sure I quite understand that. Now, it does say rear / waterway setback, but does that mean that the house could go right to the rear setback? And isn't that a risk for even that property owner if we have continued erosion and so forth? So if someone could explain that, it just seems kind of questionable to me. Thanks.
Christie?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the map that we put up earlier that had the coastal construction control lines, you have a 79 coastal construction control line, which is more seaboard, and then you have the 97 coastal construction control line. Currently, the way that this ordinance is written is right now under the town's code, you cannot build beyond the 79 coastal construction control line, which is the yellow line up there. You cannot build beyond that unless you get a variance. You also have to get your permit through DEP to build beyond that, because that is the adopted coastal construction control line. So for purposes of this ordinance, what we're saying is that right now, in the RSC zoning district, your rear setback is 25 feet from that line. So the closest you can build to that control line is 25 feet. We're gonna move that rear setback for these properties to be at that line. That way they could build their structure up to that line. What this ordinance also does is it would allow you to build non-habitable structures beyond that line, so you wouldn't have to get a variance. So for a pool, your pool deck, your patio, trellis, or that type of structure, you could have that seaward of the 79 coastal construction control line. Now for these parcels in this area of Old Ocean, they have a seawall. And under the applicable Florida statute, we believe that that would qualify for armoring, so that that would also facilitate being able to get the DEP permit for those types of structures seaward of the 79 coastal construction control line. So to answer the question, I believe, is the 0 rear setback would mean that you can build your structure up to the 79 coastal construction control line. Whereas right now, you're limited to no closer than 25 feet.
Okay. Oh, yeah, Marilee, come up, Betty. Go ahead.
I'm going to present you all with these maps, which are 1997 or so, when they redid and designated all the non-conforming lots. And anyone that wants to look at them and see what you can and can't do.
Thank you, Betty. Go ahead, Marilee.
Marilee Lundquist, 6277 North Ocean Boulevard. And I don't know what the purpose of 2020-5 is. Beachfront property will be, is bought, surveyed, taxed. We own the property. But we were not informed in this change of property rights for 2 years, over 2 years. Nobody knew. And this proposal makes half a lot unusable. Our whole house is built on the bridge, and there is such a different topography in this town that the ridge we're on, we're 22 feet above sea level. Our lot drops down to 12 feet. A1A is 8 feet. Under this ordinance, people could rebuild, I guess, in my rectangle square if they wanted a rectangle house. But not everybody, they might want a U shape or whatever. And then because the usable, I think, has been cut in half for purposes, it would be a much smaller house. So I don't know what the purpose is. Now, and I think that beach owners have been targeted. There are no other areas in town that I know of that their land, half of it is unusable because of flooding or something else like that. Now, a major part of everybody's net worth is their home. I know for us, we sold a business, we invested in building this house. This is a large part of our net worth. I think this ordinance has done more to destroy our net worth than the stock market ever had. So, any property restriction will be a loss of value. And now, there is a 1995 Bert Harris Private Property Rights Protection Act. And it states that the state law requires governments to compensate property owners when its actions constitute a taking of their property rights. Now, I mentioned that Palm Beach was tried to not use their beachfront in calculations. Well, Ocean Ridge does not want to use beachfront, dune, and the bridge area. And Palm Beach was very upset because they said that they had bad advice from their advisory committees. Ocean Ridge passed this for 2 years without input from residents or notification. So again, I urge you quietly and immediately rescind the ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Hi, good morning, good evening. John Scheibel, 6201 North Ocean Boulevard. I built my house 22 years ago, and my CCL line is, if you know where it is, I'm right on Edith and A1A, is west of my driveway. My building is built at an elevation of 25 feet, which is one of the highest spots here in town. I don't know what this ordinance does to add any value to the oceanfront properties. It takes away an issue. We already have protection. You have a CCL line that's really west of most of the houses there on North Ocean Boulevard. So if you have a structure that's got to go through, you still have the DEP requirements to fulfill. So I would recommend repealing the ordinance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, hearing none, back to the commission.
Well, this is something we definitely have to take a look at.
Got to turn your microphone.
Sorry. We definitely have to take a look at this. A few times over, I urged the prior commission to seriously take a look at it because it is an issue. Part of the issue is that people don't even know what the CCCL line is or what it's supposed to do. And I think they just don't understand it. It's not that the state ever said you can't build within that line. It just says that if you do, you have to go for a permit with DEP to make sure that environmentally it doesn't have an impact on the dune and other environmental factors that take place. Back in probably early 2000 sometime, we decided to add the town of Ocean Ridge to that permit process. I can't remember when in 2000s, but we did. We added it to be, not only do you have to apply to the state of Florida, but you also have to apply to the town of Ocean Ridge for the same consideration. But historically, we've deferred to the DEP to make those judgment calls environmentally. When they passed 2005, well, shortened for that, they made a requirement that said you can't build at all within the coastal construction control line. So that had a serious impact along the entire 3-mile stretch of the beach. Now, I know it sounds good, and we all want to help in the environment, and I am part of that, wanting to help, but it's not right. It's just simply not right. There are least restrictive measures that could possibly take place. that could aid in that without having and forcing people to go before a variance to show an unjust hardship or a hardship with respect to getting something built within that line. Furthermore, it potentially made a lot of those properties along that ocean non-conforming, which makes absolutely no sense. That just absolutely makes no sense with what was done. Can we repeal 2005? I think they had other things within that ordinance that I think may be necessary that we should look at before you have a wholesale repeal of it. But at the same time, we need to examine that. And I think P&Z went back and tried to do it, but punted. So it's back to the commission. I feel very comfortable in us re-examining that issue and making a decision for the breadth of the town because it impacts the entire town. This is an ordinance that impacted the entire beachfront properties. And I said it then, and they should have had notice. Something like that should have had direct notice. We require it to build your house now. You gotta tell the world that you're building a house. And for something like that, we didn't send any notice. It doesn't make any sense. So a publication like that, I just think is not good. So I think we do need to, so partially, I think we need to go back and re-examine and see those portions of that ordinance that would be applicable and those that don't. It's either that or somebody else is gonna tell us that we have to do it. So we're better off examining it, take a good faith attempt at trying to accomplish and balance the needs of everybody, and certainly the needs of those property owners. So I'm in full favor of re-examining that provision. Whether going back to what was done, I would ask that maybe, I hate to say it for those folks on Ann and Kareem, but I don't want to, although I trust Christie and what her opinion is her opinion. So she gave you a viewpoint. Whether that viewpoint is something that is worthwhile compared to what the proposed text amendment is, we have to compare and then make a judgment call. But you already have a proposed text amendment that all of those homeowners that are in the affected area have agreed to. So what was that and what was so wrong with it that you had to come back and revisit it and come up with a compromise when planning and zoning didn't even come with that compromise? So some things don't make sense here. And I think we should look at that and respect what those property owners want. We did that in Ocean View and Douglas. We made that overlay. We made those exceptions for small lots. We can certainly do it here. So that 2005 caused some unintended consequences that need to be examined before we get in trouble, and so does this Anna Street. I do agree with making all those properties conforming as opposed to non-conforming. I do agree that there's certain restrictions that need to take place, no different than what was done and which you aptly put and talked about the overlay in Ocean View and Douglas. So I think we need to re-examine that, take a good look at it, compare the two, and do what's right, not only for those homeowners, but for the town of Ocean Ridge. Because, it sounds good, but, it just was wrong, in my view. And maybe y'all disagree, but that's my view.
So basically what you're saying you want to do, there's two separate issues. One is the ordinance we really need to talk about, and we should do that next meeting on what was there that's removable. And then we've already had public comment, Mr. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I mean, if you really like, you know what, why not?
We'll take your tax money, but.
We'll take your tax. Your wife's already said a lot. I mean.
She represents me perfectly.
Yeah. But I think that there's two separate issues though. One is the ordinance that you got to look at to see if there's anything in there really is worthwhile to keep. And then the second issue is the text amendment and then the overlay, which I agree with you about making them conforming rather than non-conforming. What else? You guys have anything else?
Yeah, I do. I agree with Ken 100% on ordinance 2020-05. the suggestion that we hire a consultant to look at the ramifications of repealing it. The consultant should have been hired before the ordinance was passed to analyze the effect on each oceanfront property, not after the fact. I think that we are capable, staff, attorney, commissioners to review in amending that ordinance or the changes that were affected by that ordinance, specifically 6717G and 6718. Those two sections are the ones that directly address the taking of property, quote unquote. And regarding the Anna to Corinne, the text amendment that was prepared by the homeowner's attorney did address and had the support of most of the homeowners on that stretch. What Christy has prepared, I did an analysis myself of that, and we talked about, she talks about the ocean view special area, she talks about the FAR overlay, which would allow 45% FAR for homes that are less than a 5,500 square foot lot, or 7,500 square foot lot. And then with the armoring, you could add another 10%, but that still doesn't get you to a square footage of anything near what's existing on almost all of those properties. So I said, well, what if we allowed 35% on top of the 45% FAR? And that essentially 80% FAR, which no one wants to hear, but even in some cases, that doesn't even get you to where the existing homes are in several cases. So I'm happy to distribute this if you want to see. And,
Mr. Lindquist?
do you want to put up on the screen? Sure. Oh, thank you.
I agree with almost everything that was been said in the last half an hour. The one thing that, Dave Lundquist, Marilee's husband.
We know.
They already know. I'm concerned about the takings provision of the state law. And it seems to me that there are several things that filter into the conversation along here tonight that could violate the takings unless, the city is going to pay for, any of the cost, of what is required. So this whole thing, the way it evolved in town, secretly, nobody knows. Most of the realtors don't know. She knows, but a lot of them don't. I know that. And, we need to do something about that and, get this off our backs. So I'm concerned that takings, be considered here, along the way as we go. And probably what ought to happen at a minimum is that anything that is a variance ought to be extremely well annotated and studied, before it's pushed on, some poor unsuspecting homeowner.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, back to the commission.
Yeah.
What's your pleasure?
I'd just like to say, so a simple question. By the way, just so the townsfolk know that this ordinance was always troublesome to the commission. There were a couple of us that tried to boot this back in 2021, unsuccessful, outvoted. And then we've given it to P&Z. I think, is this the third time? And it's just beyond, no knock at P&Z, but it's just beyond P&Z's capability, which is why the idea of the consultant came up. My question, if we repeal this, let's say right now we repeal this, what does this do to the district? What's called the district?
Okay, so going to the one issue on ordinance 2020-05.
Right. Done.
If 2020-05 did several things in your coastal construction, part of your land development code. It put into place the 79 coastal construction control line as the line of demarcation that you couldn't build seaward of unless you had a variance and you got your DEP permit. It also addressed usable area. Now, I don't know the thought behind the usable area, but it restricted your usable area beyond the coastal construction control line. When you think about this, that if you made your 79 coastal construction control line part of like your rear setback or your final demarcation of where you can construct, you have already squished the lot.
I know, but we're getting too far afield. If this got, 79 is gone, it vanishes in the next 5 minutes, what occurs in the district? Does that now get us back to what's the word I'm looking for?
Restoration?
A restoration?
Then if you remove the 79 coastal construction control line as the demarcation for the town, then your rear setback is probably gonna be from the mean high water line. So for all those people who claim some type of customary use to the sandy part of the beach, you will now be able to, under the town's code, perhaps build up to that or beyond it. Now you'll have to get a DEP permit, so then we are dependent on DEP as to what they will permit.
Okay, and to Carolyn's question, if we just remove 67-17, does that accomplish the same task?
Well, there's multiple parts to 6717.
G.
Right.
If you just talk about G, what G did was G talked about the area between the 79 coastal construction control line and your mean high water line. And it said that area cannot be counted towards your usable or your lot size. So it's taken out of the equation. If you remove that, you are still limited to the FAR ratio, the lot coverage that currently exists in your RSE district. That means that you will be able to build much larger houses on these properties than what is currently allowed by the code and beyond what would be allowed in the Ocean View special area.
How can that be though? If before we introduced 2020-05, they could already have that ability. If it didn't occur, it would have occurred.
Because of creating the 79 coastal construction control line as your demarcation for construction, by doing that, you made those lots smaller in terms of buildability, correct?
So they can't rebuild their own house, that's the
Right,
problem.
basically.
Well,
Right.
what part
Without
of
a
this
variance.
ordinance,
Right.
what part of this ordinance does that I proposed was that you can rebuild to your current footprint. So if your current footprint is larger than what would be otherwise allowed, you can rebuild to that. And
Footprint,
that's-
but does that take stories into account? Does that take FAR into account?
It does. It takes into building to your current existing height and FAR and lot coverage. So what currently exists, and that's what the first part of it does. If you are non-conforming as to lot size, lot width, and lot depth, you can build to your current footprint and you're considered conforming to all three of those things. But if you want to develop under a different footprint, then you would have to conform with the current RSC requirements unless you're on the east side of Old Ocean.
So if you sell your oceanfront home and someone comes and buys it for a lot of money and they want to build something different there, they're subject to these restrictions.
That's true. Yeah.
So you're
That's-
devaluing
that's
that
the-
person's property, the first person's property that's selling it to the next person's property.
When
'cause
you
they're not
buy
gonna be able
it,
to-
you buy it with the existing codes. Now, when you start talking about a Burt Harris or a takings claim, Burt Harris was created by the Florida legislature to address a takings that's less than a full taking of your property. The Fifth Amendment protects you for a full taking. Burt Harris is for less than a taking, so anytime you downzone, which this ordinance did, then you have to consider whether there's a Burt Harris claim. Now, with a Burt Harris claim, you're entitled to compensation for the difference between what you believed as to be your reasonable expectation for that property versus when an ordinance was put in place and enforced that you believe reduced your property rights. When you feel that you're entitled to a Burt Harris type of claim, you'd have to do an appraisal. And that appraisal would show the value of your property, what it existed before the ordinance was passed, in this case, 2020-05, versus what you could build now after 2020-05. And I think the conversation that Commissioner Cassidy and I have had about this is, I don't know what the buildability was before 2020-05 went into effect. We do know that there's language that was deleted with 2020-05 that dealt with septic fields. I don't know what the impact was for that. Clearly, they still exist to some extent. I don't know what. When the 79 coastal construction control line was adopted, with that ordinance, I don't know what existed prior to that DEP would have or would not have permitted. So when someone does that type of appraisal, they have to go back to the snapshot of what the law existed in terms of their development rights at that time and compare those to now. I can't tell you what that are, and that's the burden of someone who comes forward with a Burt Harris claim. They submit an appraisal to the town to show what they believe their claim based on, and then we have an opportunity to review that appraisal and decide whether or not we want to make some tweaks to our ordinance, whether we want to talk with them about perhaps just compensation for the difference, or whether or not we think there's some flaw in their appraisals and we want to push back and say, no, here's where we think there's some issues. That's how you deal with the Burt Harris claim. You can't just take 2020-05 in a vacuum because you've got to take it as to what it was existing before 2020-05 to determine what their rights were before that. So it is a lot of information. I think Commissioner Cassidy and I have looked at this a lot. We've had a lot of discussions with it. And you're right, it's my opinion, but I'm trying to find some type of middle ground. It won't make everybody happy. I don't know if repealing 2020-05 will make everybody happy or if it's in the best interest of the town. That's certainly at your discretion and your decision. I'm just trying to move the conversation along if we're not going to get a consultant to study it further.
So the ordinance, if we just looked at those sections that dealt with the usable land area, the changes affected by moving the property line essentially from the mean high water mark to the 79 line, it seems to me that that's a pretty straightforward approach to revising that ordinance without touching the rest of it. Because, you know, there's a lot of stuff in there, which is another thing going forward with too many things in one ordinance, it makes it really muddy. And no one's building on the beach. No one's building to the mean high water mark. No one's building east of the coastal construction control line without our approval and DEP approval. So you can't suggest that houses are going up on the beach. That's not at all what happened, you know, by creating this ordinance.
Well, why not just, I mean, it seems like there was a reason why planning and zoning suggested this, or the town commission asked them to look into it, and they brought it back to the commission at the time, and you voted on it. Now, after all this has gone through, it's basically shown that it's flawed. So why not go ahead and repeal it completely? Start over to what was the reasoning altogether for it, and then reevaluate it, and like you're saying, take parts of it. And say, okay, this is the reason why we were thinking of doing it this way, but unfortunately, when it got all put together, maybe the parts of the whole just didn't work. So split it apart, repeal the thing, start over again and find out, okay, this is the reason why we did it. Let's look into these other, let's see if we can make them non-conforming. Make that a whole separate issue. You know what I mean? Make that a issue. Let's make this non-conforming, this area, because now there's seawalls.
I mean, right now.
Right. No, not right this second. I'm saying repeal the ordinance right now. Then go back in and saying, okay, now let's talk about making all these lots conforming instead of non-conforming.
And then you take away that usable land area restriction.
Well, you create the discussion now between the commission, and you work through this, because it seems to me, Ken was saying, there's more than one or two issues here. But in that ordinance, there's many issues.
So I know no one wants to hear the dirty word consultant, but by the time we get through this, trying to figure it out, Christie's doing her best to do it. If a consultant came in, let's say we repeal it, then a consultant comes in and constructs a proper 2020-05 for us.
So that's my point.
Okay, fine. And then in the meantime, when the 2020-05 is gone, these homeowners don't have this ongoing problem. It evaporates.
Mr. Mayor, I would say that repealing 2020-05 solves the coastal construction, but it does not resolve all the issues for the
No.
owners between Anna and Corinne.
We recognize
because
that.
Okay.
We do
That's what
recognize,
Jeff
that's the
just
whole,
said,
that's
that
the
we
point.
still have to
So
look at the.
then we go in
making
and start
conforming.
recognizing what the problems are, and then create an ordinance drafted to fix whatever problems there may be.
Okay, so two wrongs don't make a right. And just by repealing it without knowing the consequences, I mean, I'm all in favor of resolving the issue. I spoke about it then when it went on deaf ears. But it doesn't mean that you should just do something just to do it, because we don't know what the effect of that is. If we repeal it, does it go back to the original plan? Does it go back to what was done? Maybe not. So we have to look at that. Let's not be a knee jerk about it. Let's look at it, be smart about it, and make the right decision, which should have been done to begin with, and with all due respect. And look at those ramifications, look at the impact. I'm not saying that, I'm all in favor of getting rid of requiring a variance to build within the coastal construction control line. Hear it, I believe it, it's not necessary. But at the same time, you just can't repeal something that you don't know what the effect of that repeal is going to be. Follow me? Because we don't know what that means. She can't tell us
Well, I didn't.
without looking at it. So
Just to interrupt you though, I
let's
think
do it.
that most people didn't know what it means when they even made the ordinance.
Right, thank you.
So it's like, so why would I, if we don't know what it means to repeal it, that's my point is, so we go back to the beginning. You don't know, they made an ordinance,
But
created an
it's
ordinance.
just not an automatic. So unless we do something and know what the effect of that repeal is, right? Because you still gotta have some ordinances in place, and that ordinance replaced other ones and doesn't automatically go back.
Did
So
that
we have to
ordinance
see what
replace
we
other
do.
ordinance?
Yeah.
We have to see what the impact
That
of
that is a valid point. If that ordinance replaced other ordinances, yes, then we need to take a look at that.
But
But
did
if
that
it
ordinance
didn't-
replace other ordinances?
Because the
It's got
problem didn't
it's got
start.
Underline and strike through it. So there's language that was deleted and there's language that was added.
It's one more month to do it right is not gonna make a big difference at this juncture, after 3 years.
You think it's only gonna take 1 month?
Well, whatever it is, we need to resolve the issue, not create another issue. And that's what's really important.
So I'll agree to that if in fact, when we get to the next meeting, Christie says you can repeal this specific section of this and it gets you underway.
I'm gonna go one step further. I think we ought to allocate X dollars, $5,000 or $10,000, to give the power for Christie and the town manager to consult with a land planner and really look at it, which should have been done to begin with.
Right.
And how quickly can that
Listen,
happen?
I deal with this more than anybody on this commission, and even I don't feel comfortable doing that, right? So let's do it right. Let's get a professional involved and create and do something that is the correct thing to do instead of the knee-jerk reaction to trying to whatever it is.
Okay, well, how about this? I mean, you just said the lines were delineated, not delineated, but marked through that changed the ordinance, correct?
The ordinance itself has the strike-through language and the
Right,
things that
so
were taken
if-
out, and then the underlined language of things that were added. And
That's my
Christie can
point.
send
So if you're
everybody
te-
that.
So my point is this, so if you're telling me that our attorney cannot go through, which literally was written out and crossed through, that's the determined effect that you're speaking of. That's what was taken out. So you're telling me you can't go look through that and say, okay, this was taken out, and what would happen if we did just.
Well, thank you. Okay, come back at the next meeting, not repeal it today.
Right, no,
That's
I'm
what
not
I'm trying to
saying, but
get
I'm
you
just
not
saying
to
that,
do.
right, but the point I'm trying to make though, I don't think we should have to spend $5,000 for a consultant for what we will do later, but for what, to repeal this ordinance now, the town attorney can look and see what was marked through and how maybe it would have, what would have, the effect would be.
Well, I was going one step further. I was talking about, since the item on the agenda is the Anna Street
I agree with that,
That
but
was
see,
a-
to me, there's two
Okay, so we're
separate
separating
issues.
it out, but
Yes.
keep in mind that the topic was the Anna Street and not the 79, the 2005.
Right, but our topics has been
So,
mixing around.
Instead of guessing, which you did a good job and compared to the text amendment, let's go ahead and look at that and do the right thing. We did that with Ocean View and Douglas, we should do it here. So,
Okay, so here's my
if you
question.
want two different things, that's fine, but let's bring it back. If you want to make recommendations, get legal counsel to come back to the next meeting with what the impact of the repeal is and what that process would be and what the impact would be, I'm okay with that.
Okay.
What
Oh,
would be
hold
our?
on, but please, if you want a public comment, you have to come up, state your name and address for the record, no yelling from the audience. Ms. Barish,
Hello. As you know, from my husband.
you have name and address for the record,
Oh,
please.
sorry, Alana Barish, 6275 North Ocean. As you know, we've only been here a year and a half, but I think one thing to take into consideration with postponing this is that all of us on the water, our property size and value has been affected, therefore our taxes. And therefore, if we really wanted to, we could go to the government and ask for them to look at our taxes and ask to be paid back for all the money we have spent for them since this ordinance was passed, if we really wanted to. So I think the town is opening itself up to tax loss, and I think that's something to think about, especially since according to other residents, no one was informed of this. When we purchased our house, our realtor didn't know about it, the owners of our house didn't know about it. We were told, going in with all these kids, that it would be possible to build. We met with the architect who built our house and many houses in the neighborhood, and he fully believed it was possible. No one knew. Even now, no one truly understands the whole thing. So I agree with repealing it, and then very quickly amongst yourselves, because you know the town best, going through and looking at what points can be instated before the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so the way I look at it is that why don't we give it to Christie, look at the items that were struck and the items that were added, how do they affect, or what would be the effect of the town if those were reinstated? And what changes were made other than that could create a problem for the town on that ordinance?
And what the purpose was for.
Exactly. So when that'll be brought back next meeting.
So, but hang on, so we bring this back, she untracks the changes, so she shows us what was changed. And then we're sitting here with this document. What do we do?
Well, that's the opinion. Were the changes that were made?
Right.
Are they gonna have some large unintended consequences?
Now we have possession of that knowledge, because we're
That's
looking at
correct.
it. But then what do we do?
Well, then that would be the pleasure of the commission. You have to think that's what we're all here to do.
She could do this.
Yeah.
I know, I'm just looking at what these people are saying about the delay.
Listen, it's been going on. This 1 month, with all due respect, I'm not gonna worry about 1 month when we could have a bigger impact by doing it the opposite and face the same type of liability.
This is brought to our attention. 5 or
So
6 months
now we have to just do it right. So what I would suggest that the town attorney does, given the direction and hearing the conversation that took place today, that she then proposes with her recommendation, a replacement ordinance.
Okay, fine. That was my question.
And go from there, and then we can decide on that. And if you decide to do that in conjunction with the repeal, with the ordinance, I think she can do that. Do you have a month enough time to do it?
I'll do my best, is all I want to
Okay,
say.
if you do your best, that's all we can ask. And we all understand, we want to do the right thing for everybody. And at least that's my intent, and I'm sure that's everybody's intent up here. But that entails looking at all aspects of it, not a singular aspect of it. I'm wise enough to know that, and I think it would be prudent on us to do that. And I think doing this will take us down that path. That's my view.
So that's my view as well. The view is just to bring it back next meeting on what the unintended consequences would be if we repealed the ordinance. Now, bringing back another ordinance to replace it, I think that's a little more work than.
Oh, no, I'm just talking about, you talking about the strike-throughs.
Yeah, the strike-throughs, that's it.
If after her analysis, she looks at it, and feels comfortable with coming back and saying, this is what, if you did repeal it, these are the things we need to put in that repeal, motion.
So you're still
to
repealing
correct-
it, right, I get
To
it.
correct what needs to be
fix it.
corrected. Instead of creating a bigger issue.
Is everybody on board with that?
Yeah.
Yep.
That's, I guess, consensus and direction. All right,
Thank you, Kristen. God bless you.
Now,
all right.
and about the Anna to Corinne, what are we doing about that right now, do you think?
Right now, if we're gonna do anything about that, we'll fix this, and then we'll bring that back and create actually talk about the idea of how we're going to, and if we want to, create overlays, create the changes. And that'll have another discussion on that
Can
issue.
we direct the town manager to, or the town attorney to go out and, since this should be a simple, relative review of it with a land planner. It might be very inexpensive to do, but maybe at least come back with a proposal as to an estimate of what that would be.
Now, I believe
I think I could guess, but.
Steve, I believe we did that. And we did direct the town manager to look into
Okay.
land planning.
And did we?
Well, she's been a little busy on that.
It's been a little busy. I also have,
Betty's?
It actually proposes an overview for that district.
Overlay?
1999, at the same time you guys were doing the Ocean View district. So interestingly enough, I will send out copies of all of this to you tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay, so you see how important this is regarding the expert. So if you could move along on that, would be appreciated. Because Steve and I did do
Yeah, I
that.
believe that when we started talking about the consultant, we focused in on the consultant for the comp plan amendment that needs to be done. And I think the commission was looking for a sooner decision on
Right.
the annex.
This is by the same consultant.
Right.
He was gonna attack this problem first.
Well, I thought that focus was not to use a consultant for the Anna Karen issue, but to use a consultant for the comp plan amendment, because you wanted to answer sooner rather than later on Anna and
Right,
Karen.
I thought the same gentleman was gonna do both. He was gonna attack the Corinne situation and then move on to the comp plan. That's
When was
my-
that discussed, decided on?
That was 2-3
I think
meetings
that
ago?
was at the March meeting,
Mhm.
because then it went back to planning and zoning after that. To look at 2020-05. So if you want to, if the direction is to use a consultant for both issues, we can certainly explore that.
Please.
Dependent on cost, as Ken pointed out.
So, but so the consultant getting thrown in here, are we still on track to look at something substantive to make a decision on in June?
That would be as much work as can
We will
happen
do
between
our
now and June. That would be a little
absolute best.
tight.
It may end up being different consultants for Anna and Corinne and the comp plan. We may use our regular planning consultants for the Anna and Corinne and someone different for the comp plan, because comp plans are more comprehensive
Sure.
by nature and are specialized consultants generally.
Well, we should be able to get a price on what it would cost for that by
Yes.
the June meeting.
The Anna and Corinne should be hopefully done, is what
Okay.
Commissioner Cassidy is asking for, yes.
That's just another month and then we just have a cost
Do
to
we have a
look at.
professional land planner on?
In a month, yeah.
Wait,
staff?
our consultant for.
Our consultant?
We have a
Okay, so
consultant.
that might be enough to run whatever the two plans are and what would be best for that. I'm really curious now, Betty, thank you. You're refreshing my memory now for that. When we redid, and Terry, I think you were involved in that as well, if I remember correctly. When we redid that code in 99 and 2000, we did the Ocean View and Douglas overlay. And I thought we did do that area, but I guess it maybe didn't get through. I have no idea, I don't remember. But it'd be interesting to see because we did have a land planner go through that entire code, if you guys recall, And we had, it was extensive, and it was over several months. So, and it changed the code completely. It was a rewrite.
Okay. So does everybody have their consensus of what they need to, you know what you need to do? Chrissy, you know what you need to do? All right. Thank you, everybody, for that, adding the comments. All right, move on to the staff and committee reports. Oh, no, we got 60 outside of the dog.
You're skipping over to dogs.
Dogs and cats, cats and dogs.
So this, I looked into, based on a resident's public comment last month about our code language dealing with dogs and cats, or dogs specifically, but, and his particular concerns were with the language on noisy dogs, violations declared a nuisance regarding impoundment, disposition of impounded dogs or cats, and vicious dogs. And in looking into this, the most troubling part is the vicious dogs. And you have a copy of the county ordinance here, and I also looked up Gulfstream just to compare what their language says. Section 1032, which deals with noisy dogs. We have language in section 34 of the code that deals with nuisance and how to file a complaint and the penalty for a failure to abate. So I guess I'm just suggesting maybe we could refer to that section of the code in kind of tightening up the noisy dog language. Violations declared a nuisance and impoundment. The county does include cats in this section, but just about that they may be impounded, not shall be impounded, but may be impounded. And then disposition of impounded dogs. It just says if an impounded dog or cat is not claimed, the police department shall deliver it to the county animal control division. Maybe we could add, like the county does, say after 4 days or a number of days. And then this is the most important part, is talking about vicious dogs. The county code has classification of aggressive, then they go based on different criteria to dangerous, to vicious, in their section 427. It's just that the way that our language is written, it could be loosely interpreted. It says that if a dog attempts to bite people or other dogs, it's considered a vicious dog and a police officer may kill the dog without impounding or giving notice. The county code calls for it should be confiscated, quarantined, impounded. And I think the point is that it goes without saying that a police officer is going to be able to shoot a dog if it's posing a direct harm to a person or another dog. But to say it in this way, it just seems a little bit aggressive. So I'm wondering if we could consider softening that language a little bit. I mean, Gulfstream doesn't even include anything about, all it says about vicious animals is that they shall be adequately muzzled when they're being walked.
Okay.
So.
Well, it says any dog that attempts to bite people or other dogs shall be considered a vicious dog, and any police officer may kill the dog without impounding such dog or giving notice to the owner.
It just
So
sounds.
what did you want to change? I mean, how would you change that? The dog, what a policeman's, excuse me, everybody. Please, trying to get through this. What do you say, Scott?
I think it depends on the severity of the bite. If a dog is mauling somebody, I think it would give us the right to expire the dog life.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes, please.
So the county code on this issue provides the due process because animals, you're entitled as an owner of an animal to due process before someone can impound your animal, kill it or otherwise. So the county has a process where the person is provided an opportunity to appeal a decision of whether they're aggressive, dangerous, or vicious. It mirrors a state statute that does the same thing. So there's an entire due process that you're entitled to, and that's what the county code does really well and addresses that process. A lot of cities just adopt the county code. You can then make tweaks to it as you like. for other areas that may not be addressed that's specific to your municipality or town. And so I would suggest if we're gonna talk about taking people's animals, which I don't think happens very often, that we just simply adopt the county's code in terms of that provision, dealing with how you deal with an animal that's been confiscated.
Okay, well, let me give you for instance, how many times you get the civic readiness, they found a cat. Now, regarding the 65 pages of the county ordinance, that cow would be impounded. And our ordinance says that we would pick it up. I mean, in their ordinance, it says the cow should be impounded because it's now free roaming, like this one section here. It says about the free roaming dogs on ours. The dog found running at large in the town or in violation of any other provision of this article is hereby declared a nuisance and shall be impounded. A lot of times dogs just get out, and they're not vicious, they just get out. So you go and you pick it up, but there are some wording in here that probably could use a little tweaking, but to take the whole ordinance, the county ordinance, and put it in there, I think just looking at our ordinance and just kind of clean it up a little bit would suffice. But it's up to the commission. I mean, you have language you want to put in there?
No, I mean, I hadn't developed the language. I mean, I'm happy to do that, since Christie's gonna be busy with
I mean, let's go, let me ask you a question. Have we had a lot of instances where this is an issue?
I don't know. When we impound the dog, it's because we found it, like you said, we have a cage here, we have a chip reader, we put out the civic notice that we found them, we try to reunite the dog with its owner. I maybe think of my time here that we've turned the dog over to animal control maybe once or twice because we can't find an owner.
And how many years is that?
8 years, 7 years I've been here. My previous job, it's very rare that we call. We do everything we can to reunite the dog with the owner through the chip reader, through the notices. We cannot keep a dog for 4 days. We try to keep them maybe 1 day because we have to walk them, feed them. We don't have a cage big enough for some dogs.
Okay.
And he would stay in our garage and howl all night when we get noise complaints.
Any public comment?
It's going to sound very silly. Virginia Siggety, 33 Exar Way. How about if we're going to say kill, we say mauling, and then that solves the whole problem. If there's a mauling, obviously that's different than a dog biting, just a quick little snap.
That's what I said. I said if a dog was mauling somebody.
Of course.
If it's just a dog biting another dog or just a nip, no, we're not going to use deadly force on a dog.
Right.
There is a discretion, right, of the police department.
But, yeah, so on the discretion issue though, if a dog is charging at a police officer, a large dog, the police officer's gonna shoot him.
Of course.
Right, okay, just so we're clear on that.
Right, public comment.
Mike Pfiffmeyer, 5 Osprey Court. Thank you. I was the resident that brought this issue up, given a noise complaint that started in my area of Ocean Ridge as it related to the variety of dogs that are there. And so looking at the ordinances, looking at how they're written and how frankly ambiguous and open they are to interpretation, and that they were clearly intended to cover specific efforts. For example, impounding dogs that were free roaming. But the ordinance doesn't say that. It says the free roaming and anything else under this section, meaning that under a noise ordinance or under the noise complaint, you can impound the dog, which does, as the town attorney has mentioned, does not offer the residents the due process of law, which then opens the city to a problem under due process of law. So as town attorney says, when you're adopting the state statutes and you're adopting what then is mirrored under the county statutes, you're allowing yourself that much more protection. You're allowing the town that much more protection through that due process. So yes, if just like if a dog is attacking a person, that's actually covered under a completely different section. It has nothing to do with dogs and cats in general. It just, or under even the county pieces of those ordinances or code that might be in place. That's covered under, the same thing that protecting yourself will be, from another person or their property, or if a car was coming at you. Those sort of things, and employing those kinds of self-defenses are covered other places within the law. There's no need to have this superfluous language in our town codes that opens the town up to liabilities. When I say liabilities, I mean lawsuits. Because yes, it does call for discretion, and no, it's never happened. But why include it in there anyway, when it's covered in other places? So when I originally presented these ideas, I presented changes to each of these 4 sections. Most of them are just getting redacted because they're covered someplace else, including under the vicious dog mandate is covered under the Palm Beach County ordinances, as well as obviously thank you to the town attorney for under the state law. So it just seems to me to be superfluous, and as such, in an effort to reduce unintended liabilities, maybe we could amend it as such. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. What's your pleasure?
Happy to take a stab at it, but I'm not an attorney.
Well, that's what we have attorneys for.
Yeah.
So why don't I suggest that we, since we have a lot on our plate for this month, maybe within 90 days, 60, 90 days, the town manager comes back with her recommendations in conjunction with the town attorney, make recommendations to changes to the cat and dog, and I'm pro dog.
Not pro
So,
cat.
not pro cat, dog guy. No, just kidding. No. Anyway, make suggested changes in conjunction with what the gentleman said, make some sense, and bring back some recommendations. So that's.
Is that the consensus of the commission?
Yep, sounds fine.
Sounds
Okay.
great. Yeah.
Lynn, you got that? Christie?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. All right.
Okay.
Planning, zoning.
Rick Carey, representing Planning and Zoning Commission. I do have our staff report in front of you. I think many of these items have been addressed earlier this evening. Happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, I have none.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Nope.
No.
All right.
Have a nice
Town manager.
Mr. Mayor, my report is in the packets. We already did the staff recognition. We said goodbye to 2 commissioners. Now we've said hello to 2 new commissioners. Getting ready to start on the budget next month. So I hate to say this, but expect the June meeting to be a long one, as we will be starting at 2 p.m. Welcome to the board, gentlemen. Parking lot was resealed and restriped, and good night.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Chief? I'm sorry, I skipped you, Christie. But you usually have nothing anyway.
Would appreciate it.
I provided you my report. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. I also have a memo, I think it's in there, that I drafted town manager about replacement of our current LPR vendor that we have at our entry and exit points. I don't know if you've read it, the memo. If we lock in before June 30th, we would save the town over the course of the 5-year contract. It'd be $4,000 a year, because it's a discount of $500 per our 8 cameras at our entry and exit points. We currently have the Flock system, which I'm proposing we go at 6 locations in town. The homeowners in the Bryan Regions community privately fund those cameras. Our officers and our dispatchers are happy with the performance of the existing Flock cameras. The Flock cameras are very user-friendly and come with a plethora of alerts. The officers can utilize these cameras in their car laptop, which gives it instant feedback in real time to fight these alerts and stuff the cars. My suggestion is that we merge these 8 cameras with the Flock system to have unity and operate under one platform. But we would have to fund this out of this budget up until the October, from June to July, to lock in that discount. If not, it's a $500 per camera increase.
Are there any
For the
other
8 cameras.
options in this, or is this,
Well,
is this the best option?
this is what everybody's going with. We already have 6. We'd be under the same platform for all of our LPR cameras. This is new technology. We're done with a 5-year maintenance plan. There's solar, they don't require electricity. All the Barrier Islands from Palm Beach, Gulfstream, Palm Beach is looking at them now. They have some. Manalapan is in contract with them. We have 6. We just do our entry and exit points, replace them with the old technology. It was from Genoptix, which we've had since 2018. I sent the contract to the lawyer to make sure there's no problems there if we would break that. It was for 3 years. It's from 2018. Gulfstream is going with Flock. Island Beach has Flock. So every Barrier Island will have the same camera, which enables us to share. We can see theirs, they can see ours for investigative purposes.
This is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
I make a motion that we fund and, get the Flock, cameras, right?
Yeah.
And, do we still have a contingency fund? Paid out of the contingency fund.
There's a motion, is there a second? Motion is second.
Mr. Mayor, one issue, I do need to check the contracts to make sure that there's not any termination provisions with our current vendor.
Okay.
There appears to be several contracts related to these cameras, so we're trying to sort that out, but assuming there's not, then there shouldn't be an issue.
If
Do you wanna
it's a
amend your
minor,
motion?
If it's something, do you wanna give some authority that if there's a minor termination such as, what would you suspect if there were one? Would it be under $2,500?
I just don't know because, as the chief said, it's an older contract and there seems to be 3 different versions and which one version is what we're currently paying under, or if there's something else out there, I just don't know. So I've got to sit down and really go through it and figure out, or perhaps reach out to them and figure out what contract we're under.
Okay.
Right now, we were planning on putting this for approval on the June agenda since it's got the June 30th deadline. So if we want to wait to take formal action on it, that would give.
So you tell me that it ends June 30th, all these?
Right.
Well, to lock into this price that they submitted.
Discount.
Yeah. So if we want to wait to take formal action and give the town attorney time to search that out, we could do that.
How long does it take to implement?
I think it's very fast. Like I said, they don't even have to do power. It's setting a pole and strapping the camera to the pole.
And they already have other cameras like that.
We have
Intent.
them in, on Inlet, Sable, Island, and the county pocket were Gulfstream Views and Briny area.
So I'll amend the motion that if there is no cost of termination, that you go ahead and proceed, and if there is, bring it back to the commission, then we'll make the decision in June. That's my motion.
Do you want to amend your second?
I don't know about no cost. I think you're right there putting a little.
There's an installation fee. It's a $5,000 upfront.
No, he's talking
No, we're
about
just
canceling the contract.
termination.
Yeah.
So I don't have a problem with going to 2,500. If it goes above 20, you see what I mean?
Yeah.
It's over cost 2,500.
Perhaps we could just bring it back in June.
Yeah, just
Bring it
make-
back in
make
June.
this-
Right, so you don't want to miss it.
That's fine.
You want to just?
We won't, we have
cancel
until
your-
June 30th.
Okay.
So you want to cancel your motion?
If that's what the mayor would like, I will pull back my motion.
Keep it for a
Thank
second.
you. You're keeping your second.
Do they find bikes too?
You
All right.
can't wear beach sweaters, right?
So we're going to bring that back in June.
Yes.
All right, great.
Completely.
All right, is there anything else? Hearing no, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, speaking of ambulance,
Thank you.
I'm gonna talk to you. You can't have a presentation like that.
What I
From
do
the-
now.